Topic 1. With the withdrawal from Afghanistan, many are declaring the war on terror to be over. Looking back, was this war ever worth fighting? Was there another path? Could we have fought in a different way, where civil liberties weren't curtailed? Or was this inevitable? Do you even think that the war is truly over? So yeah, people are saying you hear a lot in certain circles that the war on terror is over, that this withdrawal from Afghanistan is that signal. But one, is that actually the case? And two, like, was this worth fighting to begin with? And if it was worth fighting, like, did it have to look exactly the way we did it, right? Uh, was there another path? Was this really the best that we could have done? So we'll go around doing introductions, starting with Captain Jones.
Yo. Yeah, no, I don't think that we had to go to war in Afghanistan or Iraq. I think that in Iraq we've basically failed. We took a country that had, yes, a despot and yes, a dictator, and it was fucking horrible, but we made it even horribler. And that's not good. That's not good. And we did the exact same thing in Afghanistan. So yeah, like, probably not a great thing. And obviously we failed. And I would love to hear what everyone else has to say.
Wordy.
Yeah. I recently had a debate about this with Connor, and I feel like generally it was a productive conversation. And really, the emphasis is no. I don't feel it was really productive. And I think basically the problems we see that happen in Afghanistan are largely the same problems, kind of representative of military intervention. Is problems in communication intelligence, interest through policymakers, and generally the destabilization of regions that lead to worse consequences further down the road, which are pretty demonstrable throughout almost every single military intervention. I would say there are very few select circumstances to kind of add some nuances where you can engage in military conflict, but by the vast majority of it, I would say nah.
Okay. Counterpoints.
Yeah, I hope the lesson that we can learn here is that large scale. I'm hoping large scale invasions are done in the 21st century. I really do. I'm not saying that that's true. I'm not saying that there isn't going to be another terrorist attack that's going to draw us out in a similar way. But the whole point, if you actually read Osama bin Laden's manifesto, was to basically trigger the West in such a way as to launch a geographic land war in Asia, so they could drain our resources, drain our blood, and then unite the Islamic world against us. That was actually his plan. It went to plan. We just didn't collapse, or at least haven't collapsed yet. And we've spent trillions of dollars. There's hundreds of thousands, if not a few million people who have been killed in these conflicts, either directly or indirectly. And then what I'm hoping we can draw from this, basically looking forward, is we need to target these things from like a law enforcement perspective. A traditional land war, hundreds of thousands of troops invading countries, holding them geographically and all that kind of stuff, has been a disaster for a lot of people. And I think we just need to concede that and then look at what we can pull out of the shit show. So I'll leave it there.
Truly false.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to be slightly different. I mostly think that this was an inevitable consequence of what happened, especially looking at America in 2001, right after 9/11. We were going to go to war. We were looking for every chance to. And the fact that the Afghan government was refusing to give us Osama bin Laden, the best offer we had was transferred over to a third party, which obviously the U.S. was not going to find acceptable after 9/11. We're obviously going to do that. Was there a better path? Yeah, probably. Our long-term nation building and stuff like that we were trying to do isn't really the best way to do it. Overall, the war on terror as a whole actually hasn't been too terrible when you look at like what the U.S. has done in a lot of different areas outside of just Iraq and Afghanistan. If you include like Libya, where we're just there for air support, Syria, where we keep a couple troops on the ground and are mostly just there for air support. A lot of these style of methods actually work and provide support to the counterinsurgency groups that are in the countries. So it's a really nuanced conversation about the war on terror.
Okay. Maybe.
I actually agree with the first part of what Truly False said. But in terms of like there being a better way, I think that just what I know about the conflict and what I've researched into it, it seems like the issue was that we didn't go far enough in our nation building. I feel like we should have had more troops there. We should have done a lot more to hunt down the Taliban and Al Qaeda and any of these fighters when they were like in the outskirts and taking over little towns and shit. They should have been hunted down mercilessly. We should have started westernizing the culture there. We should have started bringing Western education to the area, not this fucking like half-hearted thing where we're trying to make sure that they still feel like they're in control of the country and there's like an Afghanistan government and shit. We should have just controlled the entire country, totally colonized the thing. And I think if we'd done that while seeking out and destroying these fucks wherever they popped up, the people in Afghanistan today would be much better off, and we'd be much better off. Given that we didn't do that, it does seem like it was kind of a waste.
Let's go to Jason Slidey.
I think that it was a travesty. I think that there were things that needed to be done there. I think getting bin Laden was an important role that that whole thing played. I do not think that we needed to be there the entirety of that time to do that. I think that there were many other ways we could have tackled that, like how we did, ultimately using SEAL Team 6, using covert ops, things like that. I don't think we needed the boots on the ground. I don't think that providing the U.S. influence there actually made things any better. I think, if anything, it inflamed tensions there. I think that the way that our contractors, what we're now finding out, the way some of our contractors acted towards women and children was absolutely abhorrent and did nothing but fuel the flames of the fire that we now are dealing with the Taliban, ISIS, and other Islamic extremist organizations. I think our best move would have been take out bin Laden as quickly as possible, as quietly as possible, get out and let them deal with how they need to rebuild their country on their own. I don't believe that every country needs what we would like to call a Western-style democracy. They need room to develop what works for them within their cultures and their countries and their regions.
Okay. Let's go to Problematic Pan this time. I got it.
Yeah, the war on terror and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race. I don't think it was ever worth it. If we take a look at the vast majority of terror attacks outside of 9/11, the harm is statistically it's insignificant. Now, morally, yes, it has a huge effect on our nation. But if we take a look at all of the resources we've dedicated to, stopping these occasional attacks and stuff, and we take into account, all the money, all the lives, and all the lack of results, I think it's clearly not worth it, especially considering how many civil liberties and stuff we lost due to it. The surveillance state has grown intensely since then. I will say, though, that I am optimistic that hopefully this period is starting to come towards an end. If we take a look at public opinion, people are more generally anti-war now. I think that this, I believe that this 20-year quagmire that we've had in the Middle East has woken up at least a decent amount of Americans to the futility of this nation building projects that we like to carry out. And so I'm optimistic that there won't be the political will in the future to continue it.
GS, you can have it.
Yeah, so my opinion on this hasn't really changed. If somebody coordinates an attack on America, on American soil, I'm all for doing whatever it takes to get rid of those people. So I absolutely support not exactly how things went down, but I absolutely support going on the offensive and responding with sending people to that country. So absolutely, I'm for that in those situations. Like somebody else said, I think it was Jason Society. I don't necessarily think we owe nations nation building. I think if they ask for it, then we can work with them. Even if we take out somebody that's important to a country, that's a imminent threat to Americans, I don't think we necessarily owe nation building. But yeah, generally, I'm in favor of retaliating against people who attack America, or especially attack on American soil.
Okay, went to the panel.
Truly, I want to ask you a quick question.
Yep.
About you're saying that signs of Libya that prove positive, right? So The problem comes for me is when you make that assertion, there's a lot of problems. For example, the economic sanctions that really led to a large scale, a lot of destabilization in the region, which led to a lot of negative consequences. And so basically, my concern is when you assert like the war on terror here, like in Afghanistan, Iraq, were really negative, but these were positives. And my concern here is that basically, as a whole, I feel that places like Libya suffered a lot of negative consequences through these war on terror policies. And I would say is just the war on terror just didn't work. Like places in Libya, they're a fucking hellhole. So like basically it comes down to like, why do we do all the war on terror? Like how many people are we willing to sacrifice, or how much are we willing to kind of affect these groups of people who are pretty well innocent just to like get rid of these small groups of people?
Yeah, and when I refer to Libya as like a quote unquote success, I'm talking about like the actual like military applications of it. The country's been in a civil war for a while, and mostly while we were doing our war on terror there, it was Inherent Resolve, I think, was the operation between like Libya and Syria and stuff like that. These, like, when I say they were good, they were militarily effective. We got done there what we needed to get done. Now we removed ISIS from both of these countries really effectively, and that's because we took more of a backseat role in a supplemental support role. But yeah, I would consider these like military successes.
Well, okay, so that kind of makes me curious, because when we look at like kind of the immigration patterns of like the fallout of like the, what would you call it, like the Sunni awakening in Iraq, and then the ensuing civil war with ISIS, and then the Arab Spring, and then kind of the inter-religious, inter-ethnic conflict, and the governmental authoritarian crackdowns, because we had kind of a hands-off approach, but we were willing to kind of jump in just enough to fuck with shit towards our desired ends. There was all these like hyper negative externalities. So for instance, like Libya, I think is a failed state that's still geographically divided between like 3 different political factions. I think there's open air slave markets because there's people from West Africa trying to make it into Europe, and they get kidnapped and captured in Libya and then sold as manual labor. So there's like a whole bunch of like hyper negative externalities that, while Gaddafi was a piece of shit, who basically he's responsible for the Lockerbie bombing, literally funding and blowing up a plane over Scotland in the 1980s. Basically knocking him out, but then having no game plan was almost worse than Iraq and Afghanistan, where we were too heavy-handed. So it's kind of like I don't know. It's kind of like you break it, you buy it kind of thing. And I think the problem is we keep fucking breaking everything. I don't know. I'll leave it there.
How are we too heavy-handed?
How are we too heavy-handed? Well, I would say that I don't differentiate between military and diplomacy. And I would say that in people's mind, they combined Abu Ghraib, Guantanamo Bay, CIA black sites, and a whole host of nefarious shit that we did in the war on terror into one crazy amalgamation of America promoting secular liberal democracy at home, but willing to be able to indefinitely detain people and torture them, as long as it was done in ways that we could say, oh, well, is it torture? And then we could argue it in, like legal battles. So I would say we broke a lot of norms in order to conduct our war this way.
Okay, but these are non-Americans, right? So they're not really entitled to the rights and privileges of an American.
Wait.
No, really quick. Stop.
Let him finish.
But what I'm wondering, if you have like an issue with like Abu Ghraib or whatever, right, or quote unquote torture. So if we capture a leader of the Taliban or Al Qaeda, and he has information that he's not giving it to us, and we need that information to prevent further attacks, like why wouldn't we torture him?
Have you heard of the thing called Geneva Conventions?
Hold on, Wordy, before we get into before we get into a moral thing. What I would say, this is actually kind of my point, because you're combining like 3 different concepts and 3 different historical events into a single historical event. Abu Ghraib was not intelligent or intelligence folks going in a smart, methodical, psychological way in order to torture people for information. This was National Guardsmen left to their own devices, just randomly deciding to terrify Iraqi detainees with guns and humiliating sexual positions and stress positions and all that kind of shit. There was no interrogation. They were just torturing these people for fun. And that's what was documented in the photos, was there was no supervisors and there was no intelligence gathering. There was literally just National Guardsmen who are basically, for those of you who don't know, kind of on the lower tier of training and experience, just torturing Iraqis for shits and giggles. So no, I don't think that, like, if you're trying to make a moral point about whether or not Guantanamo Bay is morally acceptable, I don't think you should be using the word Abu Ghraib in the same sentence.
Yeah, I think you're maybe misremembering, because this was interrogation, right? They were doing these things to break their spirits and to wear them down.
Wasn't
Right?
the one dude waterboarded 270 something times or something?
I think that was Guantanamo.
Was that Guantanamo? Sorry.
Yeah, but Abu Ghraib was also interrogation, right? I forget the guy's name, but it wasn't random torture. Right?
It was torture under the guise of interrogation.
Under the guise of interrogation. Okay, so they
it
just
was torture.
That's stupid.
Wait,
they literally got the sign off from higher ups, right? Hold on, no, there was authorization that came down from higher ups. It wasn't just like random ass people torturing people for fun.
All right, everybody yell at Doobie for the next 10 minutes. I'm gonna pull up information because I feel like this is absolutely false. But
yeah. I mean, if I'll go with you, Connor, on that.
No. You don't research. You yell at Doobie.
Well, Wordy, why don't you tell me? Why don't you tell me why you don't think it's okay to torture people?
The
might
problem,
have information that would save people's lives.
comes is when, in terms of harsh military encounters, all the kind of behavior itself is what we're trying to pursue. Is the issue is of intelligence. Basically, our intelligence systems are really fucked, right? Is the bureaucracy and the intelligence operation, like the CIA, whatever. And basically these two, the concept of intelligence failure is we don't really have any idea. So we're basically trying to fumble around in the dark and figure out information. The problem comes through torture and harsh military intervention is that you don't really resolve the situation. You instead worsen the situation, make it more difficult for you to retrieve information. So everything you're saying, like through torture and such, or interrogation, harsh measures, doesn't really actually bring you accurate information, and instead drives people to give information that you want and find satisfying instead of providing factual information. And the problem comes is when you engage in behavior like that, and then whenever the indigenous people there figure out you've been doing that, that makes it harder to collaborate with them, because they're like, well, if they tortured this one dude who was a bad guy, maybe they'll torture me next. Or maybe they tortured the innocent dude, maybe they'll torture me next. And that's the relationship that forms when you engage in these behaviors. You make the people that you're trying to work with or trying to use to figure out where Osama bin Laden is, and it leads to negative externalities here, significant ones.
Yeah, see, I think what you're saying is half true. There actually have been studies on this. They found that torture is sometimes an effective way to get information, good information out of people when you need it. Right. So yeah, sometimes it's not useful. Sometimes it is. And when you're dealing with situations, I can do that in a second. When you're dealing with situations of life and death, as they were in Afghanistan, and any of these places where they use torture, I think it can be justifiable to use it. Right. If there's a chance that you'd get good information out of it. And yeah, okay, and I agree.
So
I agree with the optics. I agree that the optics. Wait, 1 second. I agree. Wait. Oh God! Wait 1 second. Well, I want to just really quickly. I agree that the optics are really bad, right? And that people find out, oh God, they're torturing people.
More than that.
That might drive people to further hate the United States and further join terrorist movements against the United States, right? Obviously. But I don't think that means that we need to take that off the table. Killing people does that too, right? Shooting someone's uncle because he's in the Taliban also pisses off the entire family. So I don't think you just take
that's
that
called
off the
blowback.
table.
We've known about that since 9/11. That's a big reason that they hate us is the blowback, that because of the actions we've done throughout history.
Yeah, so basically it works like
but
this.
hold on. I just linked something in the chat. It's by humanrightsfirst.org, and it states the exact opposite of what Doobie just said, which is that torture, in fact, does not work. It's unreliable, and it doesn't get you better results than
they
torture.
tell you whatever you want to hear because you're torturing them, and they want you to stop.
That makes a lot of sense.
Anything.
See, that makes a lot of sense. I
they
think
will
about
admit
that.
to anything. You're being tortured. If somebody's pulling out your fingernails,
as someone who doesn't like pain,
simulating drowning you, and they're saying you're going to tell us you will tell them anything they want to hear to get them to stop at a certain point.
Anything
Okay,
that sounds good or plausible or whatever, just to make it stop.
Okay,
That
and
sounds
then
reasonable.
I would like to clarify what actually happened at Abu Ghraib. So, a general and a who was demoted as a result of the incident, and Secretary Rumsfeld authorized certain uses of enhanced interrogation techniques, some of which were done at this prison. But those didn't include sodomy. Those didn't include rape. Those didn't include like wiping shit on people. They didn't include any of that stuff. It was mostly sleep deprivation, sensory overwhelming, temperature exposure techniques, and also the use of military dogs. This was all authorized by the general. And it's also pretty clear, based off of the photos and the evidence, that you basically don't see any of the fucking CIA personnel involved in any of the shit that's used to substantiate the evidence against the soldiers who were convicted of crimes by the same administration for prisoner abuse, for abuse and torture. So no, Doobie, this isn't a part of some concerted fucking 10-head goddamn interrogation fucking program. This was 17 fucking assholes who decided that because the CIA was using enhanced interrogation, they could treat these people however the fuck they wanted. And they did so, including outside of the enhanced interrogation that was authorized at the time. And as a result, they served serious prison sentences. Like a dozen of them served like 5 years, and then 2 or 3 of them served like more than 10. So no, this is not the same thing, and the conflation is part of the problem.
Yeah, dude,
Okay,
you're
I
part
think-
of the problem. You hear it?
Shut up. Wait 1 second. So
Yeah,
I think that's a
get
fair
on,
response. So
frog.
if you're saying, if you're saying that enhanced interrogation, quote unquote, torture, was authorized, but these specific things weren't part of that. These people weren't part of that authorization. Okay, that's fair, right?
Mhm.
But I don't think that addresses the. And I'm going to post a study really quickly for you guys. And
Okay. I was waiting for it. I was like, where's it going?
yeah, it's in Twitch chat. And this was 2019, 2020. The study was done, and he found that yes, sometimes it is an effective way to get information quickly from people, right? Good information, not always, but sometimes, right? So, given that there's a possibility that this could be useful to get information, good information that could save people's lives, I really don't see a good reason to take it off the table, right? Now, we can say that it should be done responsibly by qualified people and not just random ass National Guard members, right? Sure.
Can I?
What type
Yeah.
of? I want to know what type of quality information you think we were getting from them, because most of these people, very low ranking, don't know much.
We'll
Like
never know.
you're making it sound
I-
like what we did was, oh my god, there's a nuclear bomb that's going to go off, and this one
doesn't
person knows
make-
the deactivation code. Quick, let's figure it out. Like,
It doesn't
yes,
make
of course
I saw a
it's
sense.
show
not.
about that though.
This conversation doesn't make sense. We're never going to know the information that we did or did not get from these people. So talking about what possible information could we get is silly, right?
No, it's not, because basically some of this stuff has been documented. So one of the examples that Donald Rumsfeld used in his own defense, because there were conversations about whether or not he was going to be prosecuted for war crimes, was specifically Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, one of the architects of the 9/11 bombing. And basically what Khalid Sheikh Mohammed allegedly said, again, this is Donald Rumsfeld testifying to this in his own defense when he's being considered for like a prosecution under war crime law. Okay. He basically said that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was referencing some, random fucking hadith that said that people who fight in the name of the prophet or whatever, they can't divulge information unless they basically either lie or they're under duress. Those are the only times that they can reveal information that might fuck over jihadists or Islamists or whatever. And so what Khalid Sheikh Mohammed allegedly said is that you have to do enhanced interrogation against jihadists, otherwise they're not morally capable of surrendering information to you. Also, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed allegedly divulged the fact that Osama bin Laden was using couriers, which is the way that we tracked him back down to his residence in Abbottabad and ultimately culminated in the assassination of Osama bin Laden. So while this is tainted information, while this is Donald Rumsfeld making excuses for why he authorized torture in the fucking first place, this is part of the problem. Part of the problem is we talk about how we're a city on a hill. We're a liberal democratic. We only kill people when it matches with our principles.
Boy.
Oh,
Connor, your computer.
Yeah.
Look at this. The ISIS is trying to silence him.
I
Trying not
completely
to get
agree
that
with
freedom
what he
out.
just said.
Stop.
Yeah, what he just said
That
was completely
freedom
true.
message.
Stop downloading porn. Okay. And
Whoa. Never tell a
Okay.
person to stop down.
Okay.
Guys, all this
Yeah.
take all of you
that's
take
pretty
this as a
tyrannical of
lesson.
you, Prime.
This is what happens to your internet connection when you fuck with me. Okay, don't do it.
Ugh.
That
Hey,
actually
look,
wouldn't be surprising.
we
But and it's the
recently-
wife downloading porn too, so it's not me.
We
so.
recently got BPF banned. Okay, so just watch it, Doobie. Your days are numbered.
but the point being is that like torture as a way to get enhanced interrogation or like better information is a contested subject. But at the same time, is this the path that we want to be going down? Because you have to understand, Osama bin Laden was partially motivated to do what he did in the first place because of our interference in the first place. So how do we not just continually perpetuate the cycle of violence between international jihadist organizations and the United States government?
Well, we take out Osama bin Laden. Right? No, I'm playing. I know that doesn't end it. Joking.
Yeah, it just starts the cycle.
But like, all right, so if we're gonna believe in going to war, like an attack on American soil, I can't think of what if not that, then what? Right?
Nah, we still respond to whatever happens. Absolutely. I think the problem is when you over respond like we did with 9/11 with two land invasions of sovereign nations. That's kind of the fucking problem. And that's where there's this guy named Phil Gursky. He's been on like Destiny and Vosh a couple of times or whatever. He's basically talking about how we need to shift the global war on terror from a military model basically to like a law enforcement counterterrorism model. And I think that's appropriate because if you have a suicide bombing with 100 casualties, you don't invade a fucking country with 300,000 troops. You send a SWAT team after the fucking people who did the attack, and then you either capture them or you kill them. That's what you do in coordination with local governments.
Wait, but if that group of people is part of a larger group of people that are continuing that not only assisted in planning this attack, but will also plan further attacks in the future after you take out this group of people, because of course that's continuing the cycle of violence. Why wouldn't you take all of them out? And to do that in Afghanistan, we had to invade because of Taliban were protecting Al Qaeda.
Yeah,
Because
y'all
we
agree
can't
with
take
this,
all of
right?
them out.
We
We
hold
can't
on.
take all
Wait,
of them out. They were an insurgent group. They
weren't
weren't
the
like
Taliban and Al Qaeda always at odds? Actually, the
No.
Taliban weren't protecting Al Qaeda. I think what you mean
Yes,
to say
they
is the
were.
Taliban was acting as a buffer.
No,
the
they were
Taliban was
protecting Al Qaeda.
actively protecting Al Qaeda. They
Yeah.
refused. They refused to give us any information. They weren't giving us information. They weren't. They refused to hand over Osama bin Laden after 9/11. The Taliban was actively in the way. That's why like I like the idea of like what Connor's talking about, the quote unquote like police style of tactics. But that just really wasn't an option in case of Afghanistan because we didn't have the ability to have cooperation with the local governments. That just wasn't a choice.
In
Okay,
the
I
different,
googled it, and they're right. They're right, everybody.
Okay, and the differentiation here being Iraq versus Afghanistan. So I would agree with Truly Faze that we basically said, hey, turn over Osama bin Laden and all the Al Qaeda people. Taliban said, nah, fuck you, we can't do that. And then we're like, all right, well, we just had 3,000 people died and 2 buildings blown up, so we're coming for that ass. That's understandable from a descriptive standpoint. What I would say is it's been 20 years. We've spent like $2 or $3 trillion. We've lost like 10,000 fucking troops and had probably either directly or indirectly killed like a few 100,000 people. It's time to change the way that we do this fucking thing.
Nobody said that we shouldn't have maybe left sooner. I think everybody critiqued that, but we know that when somebody does an attack on American soil, if we retaliate, it's almost understood at that point that we're going to probably lose American lives, right? So it's I mean, it's sad, right? We don't want it, but when people aggress, like we've never lived through a time where there was like a war on American soil, and we would never want to, right? Because we'd be the insurgency that dies during these things. So I'm perfectly fine with our government responding to threats on our American soil as aggressively as possible. I might not agree with staying there 20 years, but them.
So I have a quick question, GSU. Would you prefer that, like, let's say that the Taliban support a terrorist attack, suicide bombing happens in, let's just say, Houston, Texas. It kills 100 people, okay? Down at a fucking shopping mall or some shit, right? Would you support reinvading Afghanistan, or would you support basically like 30 to 50 guys going to Afghanistan, finding everybody who's responsible, and then either arresting or killing them? Which option seems preferable?
I mean, it really depends on what intelligence we have at the time and what other threats that we know about. I can't really answer that because I mean, in the stakes that you gave, it sounds like it's possible to kill those targeted people, right? But I don't know that what the situation that you're laying out if that was analogous to what happened for 9/11, right?
It's not analogous to what happened to 9/11. It's more of a situation that we face right now. So I think it always has to be proportionate. So for instance, like if there's a terrorist attack that kills a few dozen people, like the bombings in Kenya, the bombing of U.S. embassies, the bombing of the USS Cole, I would say that rather than doing a land invasion, you have to have a proportional response, and on top of that, you have to continue to go after those organizations. But what I'm saying, you might be, I'll be clear here. I'm not saying tit for tat. I'm not saying you only go after those 30 dudes and then you stop. I'm saying that helps you identify the organization and then you just go after them root and branch wherever they are. But instead of doing a land invasion with a few 100,000 conventional troops, you have a few special forces, SWAT team, local government folks, like all that kind of stuff. They do the work instead of a land invasion.
Yeah, I think I'll make a statement that everybody might agree with. If it's possible to only take out those that targeted us and that neutralizes the threat, we're almost always going to be in favor of that.
If I can jump in here, okay. So first off, Doobie, the paper you linked was not a study. That was dude giving his own personal critiques on how torture investigations happen. One of the cited issues that he said was that basically the limitation of the actual factual knowledge on the effectiveness of torture is hidden behind a lot of walls set up by the CIA. It's going to be hidden probably for the rest of our entire existence. So we can never fully know to what degree. Even in like the 20th century, was saying the amount of information available was sparse. So we can't make that assumption that torture is effective. We have to be able to rely on the data. Until we can prove that, we can either go agnostic or we can go negative to determine like the externalities. Two is talking about in terms of GSU. I think the best way to phrase this is appropriate responses, right? Is when something happens, when a threat occurs, then you have to ask, what response is appropriate, right? I would personally say sending an entire military invasion for a smaller organization, which is a minority within the group, but within the nation, is not a significant way to go about trying to eliminate that group, right? This is actually a cited issue in terms of terrorist operations. Is our intelligence is really flawed in the ability to gather intelligence compared to traditional armies, where you have that clearly defined military versus armed intelligence. Here is they can blend in just so easily, and that makes it really freaking difficult for us to track anybody. And I think this is the whole issue: is our intelligence operations, our ability to gather information, be able to effectively parse it through, because there are a lot of signals that occur, and when those signals occur, it's really difficult for both the analysts and the policymakers to kind of respond effectively. So I would say is until we can further develop our intelligence communities, we should really avoid using like a really large military responses, or I would say maybe even like degree of sending smaller operations. Is I can't trust intelligence operations, and I'm not even sure the agencies can trust the intelligence operations to effectively get the point across.
Okay, but I think it's better than you think. So for instance, like signals intelligence, the interception of like communications or whatever, that's pretty good. Also, you can use, especially when you're not constantly blowing the fuck up out of countries, you can develop friends on the ground who will help you understand the geopolitics, the factions, the players, all that kind of stuff. And part of the problem is when you invade and you're just killing the fuck out of everybody, people don't want to help you. So that's kind of one of the problems. Whereas if you took a more nuanced law enforcement counterterrorism approach, you're going to open up these avenues for counterintelligence and intelligence. One of the great complaints of the pre 9/11 CIA officers is basically that human intelligence leading up to the CIA was gutted. So this was part of like the Bill Clinton like military cutbacks or whatever. Is they said we don't need human intelligence, we don't need people out in the field getting to know people anymore. We just need to monitor intercepts and monitor communications. Well, you're only getting like a tenth of the picture when you're just watching cell phone traffic. So that's where I'm saying it's like you can scale back the military stuff while still upping the intelligence, the counterterrorism, and all that kind of stuff. And you're not losing anything. And then on top of that, we also have to think about this. I hate to say it, but we have to think about this thing within dollars and cents. Like I was a logistician in the United States military, a squad with an MRAP, which is an armored vehicle with the jammers and the body armor and the guns and all that kind of stuff. You're talking about we spend like $750,000 just to equip 12 guys. And those 12 guys can be taken out by a bomb that's made out of $50 of raw materials in 3 hours worth of labor. So we're spending $750K, they're spending 300. And that scales completely in the war on terror. And that's actually what Osama bin Laden was counting on. He was expecting us to do this. He was expecting us to spend $3 trillion over the course of fucking 2 decades and not get shit for it. So it's kind of like, bull in a china shop kind of shit. It's like if you shoot a bull in the china shop with a fucking dart gun or some shit and it punctures a hole in its ass, that's a real injury. But if the bull turns around and fucking kicks the entire store to shit, then that's a bigger fucking problem. And that's where I'm saying, like, if the issue, we have to have a proportionate response, we have to have an intelligent response. We can't let shit slide. Absolutely not. But we have to learn the lesson that large scale land invasions cannot be the response to terrorism.
What was the alternative in Afghanistan?
I'm not talking about 2001.
Okay.
Well, I think that's a really good question, though, just because like the original question was kind of like, what world would we have wanted? Like what do we think would have been a better alternative? Or was there ever a way to go into Afghanistan and somehow like surgically remove the Al-Qaeda from it without disrupting the Taliban? If the Taliban were seems like they were protecting the Al-Qaeda.
That's a hard question, and honestly, I would leave that to like American Special Forces and CIA to tell us what they think would be possible. Because basically, what you're talking about, like, sorry, go ahead.
No. I was basically agreeing with you. I think that we assume that these intelligence agencies kept us at a number one superpower along with our military is silly, right? We assume that these people don't have the intelligence to do the things that we're talking about. If we did a land invasion, I would assume that our intelligence thought that was the best thing to do. Now, if you're like Rob Noor, you think all of our intelligence agents just want to go to war all the time, then yeah, I can't argue back against that. But we have to assume that these people had the information that they had available, and these are the decisions that they made. So maybe from their standpoint, this was the most logical thing to do.
If I could respond here, Connor, you've had a little bit. So basically, there's two schools of thoughts. There's the human cognition limits, and then there's the structural limits. And the problem comes is whether you can assert a little bit of both, right? Is humans get a lot of information, right? Intelligent operations, I would say, generally, some assert that it's not, but generally they're good at getting a large swath of information, right? But channeling through that, figuring out through it, and kind of sifting through it takes a lot of fucking time. And the unfortunate reality is our intelligence operations are generally not that great at it, right? If I understood from the past, like past arguments I've heard, is that in terms of Afghanistan, we didn't really have a plan. We didn't have a full understanding of the picture. We kind of tried to generally put these groups into one area, but there are such regional differences that it's really difficult to kind of make them cohesively work together, right? It's like being Texans versus being a New Yorker, right? If you just suddenly put them together, they're not going to fucking work together. And it's like made a little more extreme there. And that problem itself is kind of the issue with intelligence. And then you not even talking about the policymakers, Congress, the president, or military generals, is their receptivity to these analysis and these channels is going to be a real problem. Like whenever what's this guy who worked for Nixon, the really famous Kissinger? Kissinger basically has a lot of motivations, right? He had a lot of motivations in getting Nixon to make certain policy decisions. And the problem comes is, in order to make effective empirical decisions, I would say is generally not capable.
You're agreeing with everything that I said, right?
No.
You're saying that there are inherent inefficiencies in gathering data and perusing that data. So maybe this was the best plan, given that they didn't have the best information available. You're agreeing with me.
No, not.
You're just saying it in a lot more words.
This is the best way for the military-industrial
there's
complex to get rich.
What he's saying is there's political motivations as well. I think the clearest way to demonstrate that it's not just these fact-finding logicians going through the data and finding out the best result is the fact that we went into Iraq, right? Now, if I clearly that was not them going through the data, so I think it's safe to assume that a lot of the motivation behind this.
What do you mean by not them going through the data? I'm not.
Well, the intelligence data.
Yeah, for example, Bush came in literally cherry-picked data in order to assert invasion.
Right.
Either that was Iraq or Afghanistan. Yeah, I'm not sure which one.
That was Iraq.
That would have been Iraq.
Yeah,
It was
so
Iraq.
There's a book that, like, if you doubt me for a fucking heartbeat, I recommend you read it. It's something called the Art of Intelligence. It's written by Henry Crumpton. He's a former CIA analyst, and he literally says that in 2001, like summer of 2001, he walks into Donald Rumsfeld's office and he says, like, hey, I think not Al Qaeda is a big deal. They're gearing up for attack. We just had the USS Cole attack last year. This is going to be a fucking problem. And Donald Rumsfeld literally looks him in the eyes and he says, can you tie this to Iraq? He says no. And Donald Rumsfeld says, call me back when you can tie it to Iraq. And when we're talking about, so Doobie was kind of asking, like, do you feel this way about Afghanistan? Like, could we have not invaded Afghanistan? I think that was possible. From a literal level, it was possible, but I think we need to remember the amount of like fucking raw bloodlust that Americans had at the time, where they literally just saw 3,000 people butchered on live television. They didn't want to fucking talk peace. They didn't want to negotiate a diplomatic deal with the Taliban. They wanted all of Al Qaeda's fucking heads on a platter served up on it, like literally like at Kabul fucking airport, every single fucking Al Qaeda person's head on a fucking platter. And anything short of that was going to necessitate invasion. So I think Afghanistan was kind of something that was going to happen no matter what. I think Iraq was the Donald Rumsfeld in particular, but the Bush administration in general, capitalizing on the rage of the American public at the time to levy it into a geopolitical goal that was pretty much unrelated to the original war on terror.
So I want to agree with everything Counterpoints just said, with the exception of that the entire American public had a bunch of bloodlust. I mean, I was a part of it. I would like to believe the other half
of the enough had
enough, sure.
Enough, but that basically drives like the vocal minority drives the perceptions of the populace, right? Like
exactly.
Well, there was a lot of economic interest over there. I mean, seriously, I know that we were still dealing with things that were legitimate to occurrences that were big deals in the country, but there were a lot of people that wanted to exploit our sentiment. There were a lot of people that wanted to exploit what happened here for their own gain, and
namely
they pushed people. They pushed people,
namely
into
the people
doing
who
this.
did it.
Well, can Captain A. Jones
into doing this.
Captain A. Jones, can you indulge my conspiracist mind for a second? So KBR is a company that you can Google. It's like it's a subsidiary of Halliburton. They're the people who basically helped with the majority of the civilian logistics when it came to the invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq. They spent the 80s and 90s basically setting up the logistics change in third-party country like contracts in order to do nation building. And they were the folks who were basically responsible for a whole bunch of nation building in Africa, but also for contracts in the Middle East as well. I want to say Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld, but I know for a fact Dick Cheney they were like the fucking on the board of Halliburton. And on top of that, like Donald Rumsfeld was the intel consultant for Bush Sr. during the Iran-Iraq war. He was literally partially responsible for inflaming that shit. And pretty much, I think the only reason why we didn't invade Iraq in 1992 was because we knew there wasn't enough support for it from Arab allies. And we put on sanctions on Iraq for like 20 fucking years, basically completely crippling their economy. And what Donald Rumsfeld asking in the year 2000, can you tie Al Qaeda to Iraq? Because if you can't, I don't give a shit. Is that it was a geopolitical goal to topple Saddam Hussein and to have regime change in Iraq long before fucking 9/11 long before 9/11 occurred. So that's kind of where I'm saying it's like these conflicts of interest. Where it gets conspiracy theory is Bush paid bin Laden to do the terrorist attack, right? That's where it jumps the fucking shark for me.
Where's Revolt? I gotta find him.
but at the same time, where it doesn't jump the conspiracy theory shark for me is like Rahm Emanuel. I think he has like a great quote, which is like, "Never let a tragedy go to waste.
Never let a good crisis go to waste."
Yep.
Right. And that's where I would say a lot of entrenched interests who already had regional geopolitical goals capitalized on 9/11, knowing that they could levy public American support into these wars. And I think we have to be really fucking careful going forward, because GSU, you were kind of asking like, well, how do we respond in an appropriate way when somebody hits us? What's the appropriate response? I kind of think like it has to scale. It has to be appropriate, and we cannot. If we learn anything from the war on terror, it's the fact that we cannot have an emotional response to violence, because we've seen what's happened And I mean, again, like we have to tally the costs. It's probably between like 200,000 to 1.2 million civilians dead, either directly or indirectly from the war on terror. And then it's probably a half dozen to a dozen failed nations in the Middle East and North Africa. Like this is a problem, and we contributed a lot to it.
Yeah, that was hella
Yeah.
based though, bro. Like that
I mean-
that was literally based as fuck.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
don't,
elucidating that.
well, no,
I
like
think-
I don't think that any of the shit that you just said is a conspiracy theory. As a former conspiracy theorist, I don't think that that's. I mean, those are literal just
Not
facts.
at all.
Whether
If we
you
start saying
tie
push
them
9/11, did 9/11? I'm out.
Well, let's
What?
let's
No.
give GSU a chance.
Yeah, I mean, I do disagree. I want to agree with you. I want to say that we're going to logically look through all these things. The cost of war is always going to be astronomically high. I think we would then start to allow things that I don't think should be allowed. It sucks because there's human lives that be lost, right? Like at the end of the day, that's what sucks about this. But I don't know about y'all.
You cut out.
Uh,
I heard I
He's
heard I
getting
don't know about
silenced.
y'all.
okay.
Yeah, I don't know what
Oh,
just
there
happened.
we
But
go.
yeah, like I like, living in a country where I don't have to worry about some of these things. So if we respond irrationally, because we're responding emotionally to certain attacks like this, I think I'm almost always going to be okay with it. Now, I do think, I think what Captain was bringing up, people using this, and maybe that was kind of people using this to also achieve other goals. I think those things with our intelligence community is always going to be the case. I don't like that, but I'm always generally gonna be on the side of
I want to point something out though. You said that an emotional response is okay, but do you understand that the emotional response, the reason that people have that emotion is because of what is being pushed out into the public sphere by those who have an interest in
there's two
creating
things,
some
right?
kind of sentiment.
There's two things, right? There's propaganda after the attack, but there's also the attack itself, right? And we can look at those two events in isolation, and we can say that a lot of people had like a visceral reaction to the attack itself. Now, whether it was further propagandized to support the war, that's why I'm definitely going to agree with you, like absolutely 100%. But I think most people that saw 9/11 looked at that and said, this is something that America shouldn't allow, and us sending troops to kill
Yeah.
people is okay in this
so
situation.
So I think
GSU.
that- I
Sorry.
think well, I'm just I just want to make a little comparison though. Like GSU, I think like what we mean by because like I think yeah the response should have been proportionate to the act. Like we don't go invading a country because they killed a bunch of our civilians. We kill a bunch of them. We kill 10 times more of them or something like that. I don't know. Insert a really tough American general line here. But like I think if we boil this down to like an example that's really personal, like what if you and you're not in a open relationship, what if you walk in what if you walk in on your partner and they're cheating on you with another person, and now your feelings, your emotional response in that moment, if you let your emotional response get to you in Minecraft, you're gonna hit them with your diamond pickaxe, you know what I mean, until they blow up and you gain their items. Like that's what you're gonna do. What we're advocating for is like not doing that. Like maybe like being like, God damn it, that is really fucked up, and walking away. Because that's the correct thing to do.
I think,
And maybe
I think
like
these are
dump.
two different situations. I agree with you. I agree with your resolution of finding your partner cheating for sure, but I don't think that maps on to the World Trade Center.
Let's
right?
go to Doobie.
So I've been kind of mulling this over for the last few minutes, but you guys had some like criticisms for like Rahm Emanuel saying, "Hey, never let a crisis go to waste" or whatever. And I'm wondering why you guys would have an issue with that. I mean, if there is a crisis, some kind of catastrophe, and it gives you the political willpower within the populace to wipe out a rival, why not use it if it benefits the country overall?
But does it benefit the country overall?
Can I answer this actually?
Yeah, go for it.
So basically, like another thing that everybody should Google is something called the Rigel Report. RIEGLE.
I still need to fucking read that.
Yeah, the Raga report. It basically documents how during the Iran-Iraq war, we sold Iraq dual-use chemicals that they use in order to produce like VX, botulism, anthrax, all the things that we accused them of having during the war on terror. The reason why we knew that they had it is because we sold it to them originally. We were using them as a pawn when Iran fell to the revolutionary Shah, in order to basically use them as a buffer province against Saudi Arabia. That way, Saudi Arabia wouldn't also fall. Okay, this is a geopolitical Machiavellian play in order to basically safeguard Saudi interest. I'm not going to pretend that oil isn't important, but I'm also not going to pretend that our fucking hands are clean in this when we're literally fucking
Sure.
selling people fucking anthrax and botulism and fucking nerve gas to drop on their fucking opponents. Then we turn around, and because they fucking launch Scud missiles into like Israel, Saudi Arabia, and fucking Kuwait or whatever, we turn around and we wag our fucking finger and we say, no, Iraq, it's bad of you to use chemical weapons. And even though we sold you the fucking chemical weapons, now we're gonna fucking invade. This is the double speak of like, yeah, sure. Do I think America is maybe less evil on the fucking world stage compared to a whole bunch of other powers? Yeah, sure. But at the same time, like, I'm not going to pretend that we didn't literally sell fucking nerve gas to the fucking people that 2 decades later we started a war because they had fucking nerve gas. Like, this is a fucking problem. And when you say like, don't let a good crisis go to waste, or we should do these things uncritically, that like my frustration with that is that we are not the power brokers. We're not the fucking people in the boardroom making the decisions. We're the fucking pawns. We're the people who see the terrorist attack, and then we go fight for fucking apple pie and strip clubs and fucking whiskey, and then we get our limbs blown off. We come back to a shitty fucking healthcare system, and then people made fucking, millions or billions of dollars off of our fucking efforts. So yeah, American hegemony is better than the alternative, but there's still some really evil, nefarious shit that I just think we have to look square in the eyeballs and acknowledge.
Yeah,
Yeah, Connor-
I agree completely that we're better on the world stage. But if we did all the stuff that Doobie's recommending, it'd be a lot harder to
I don't see what would differentiate us from any of the other fucking evil regimes that we criticize throughout like the 20th century. I literally do not like if you were like, hey, don't squander any fucking crisis, use propaganda to propagandize your people. It's okay to manipulate people into war, and it's okay to fucking have doublespeak as long as you get the results you want. I literally have no idea what the moral difference is between the United States of America, the USSR, Maoist China, or fucking Nazi Germany. I literally would not know the moral difference.
It's the same thing. It's a template for fascism. Essentially is what it is. If it continues to go down that road, and that's where we were headed, it's evident.
I kind of want to hop in off of Connor. He's real charismatic, but I feel like I have some points to say. So the problem comes is whether we can reliably kind of rely on the information, right? Is even like in the CIA, like they're saying, hey, we don't know what the fuck we're doing. And the motivated reasoning, right? It's the whole, we want to do a thing, like what Connor was saying, is we want to invade. We have reasons to invade, right? It's prosperity and peace and prosperity, national security, economic interest. Like those are the two things every nation does. And so basically what we were wanting to do is kind of like set up a staging place, like basically say, hey, we kind of want to influence more policies. We're kind of like, we don't want Russians here. We don't want fucking Chinese here. So we're basically trying to set this up. And the process is, though, if we are trying to ensure an effective relationship between us and other, when you basically subjugate the region, do a bunch of violence against innocent civilians, you're going to worsen the relationships here. And let me ask you specifically, GSU. So here's an analogy. So basically, say in the middle of fucking, I don't know, in the middle of Boston, right?
In the middle of having sex? Oh, no.
No, in Boston, right? And you have a dude who blends in perfectly, and he's able to get away with fucking bombing it just like last time, right? And basically, if that person comes in there, do you think it's appropriate to come in and basically drive people out of their homes, bomb their own places, and shoot up the places in order to get towards that one singular person? Do you think that is a reliable method of employing?
Wait, you're talking about using force on American soil now. These things are way different. Of course not.
So what's the real difference when we have international law, though?
Wait, what's the difference between dropping bombs in a foreign nation versus our own? That's a gigantic difference. Maybe you don't recognize it, but I do.
So
Still
let me
humans
ask you a
dying,
question.
though.
Do you
Like,
do you think
So I
every
was-
human is equal? Do you think
No.
every human is equal?
No,
I wasn't
I
asking
don't-
Americans
everybody.
are like at least 4
Yeah,
or
wait.
5 different other
Yeah.
humans
So
I don't
in terms
do
of value
this.
and weighting.
I
For
don't.
sure.
So, being honest, I don't really lie. Yes, I value Americans more than other people for sure, and that has a play in some of my feelings on situations like this. I won't lie at all, for sure. Like absolutely, my safety is paramount, right? So,
But
wait,
that's just the reality.
let me ask you a question. In the terms of who you are, right? You are concerned about your own safety. Do you think everybody else is also concerned about their own safety? So you
Yeah,
would
and
say
that's why
we
I
are
want this.
relatively equal, and we want to be safe and free and whatever, right? We all generally want that.
Yeah, but our safety is worth
Yeah.
more than the safety of other
Yeah,
people.
Why?
Yeah.
Why specifically is our
Because
safety worth
Americans.
more
because
than
it's
anybody else's?
mine.
because
I
of
don't know.
Our
It's
tribe,
group-
our tribe is better than
It's
their
in
tribe.
group bias. Let's just single it out to tribalism and in group bias. Yeah.
No,
It's because the pieces of dirt that we have are not the pieces of dirt that they have. Although we
Yo,
would
can-
like to make their
Okay,
pieces
that's
of dirt
like-
ours.
Can
Okay,
I?
that's like really simplistic. I mean, I can break it down a little further, I guess.
Really, that was
So you
simplistic.
start-
How dare
You
you?
start. You
accuse me
start.
of
You started. So this is how it works for me, right? So I start with myself, unfortunately, right? I love myself very much. And then I kind of extend from there. People that I care about, my family, people
Yes.
that I love, yada yada. Then my neighborhood, my community, and my city, blah blah blah. And this kind of extends out to the nation. The nation is a thing that exists that's protecting all these things that I care about, right? So yeah, if I don't know those other nations, I don't know the people, I don't know those neighbors and their families. I know mine, and that's what I care about. Right. So if I need to fuck them over a little bit to protect myself, to better the lives of myself and my family and my people, then I'm going to do it.
Yeah,
So-
and I want to ask you.
Can I address this
let
in
me-
not a
Do you
stupid way?
understand that when you do that,
I
you
just wanna ask you a
destabilize
simple
other
question.
nations and make it harder for yourself and your family to succeed because it puts us
Not
into
necessarily.
a perpetual state of
For
war
sure.
and,
Yeah, war,
and combat
is
and
always-
policing actions and everything that we've been in
we don't
for
disagree.
freaking ever.
We don't disagree.
You
When we're
accuse
at
me-
war with other
Sorry.
nations, that decreases our security in some way. But Wordy, I just want to ask you one small thing.
Okay.
Okay. You are in it's almost a trolley cart, but not the same parameters. You're in an unfortunate situation where you have to choose who's going to die. And it's going to either be whoever the closest human being you have on this planet or someone you don't know.
Mhm.
What do you do? Do you say it's impossible? for
If
me
it's
to
just
choose?
1-to-1?
I murder that
Yeah.
person that I don't know. What the fuck?
Wait.
In a video game.
Exactly, right?
This is a bad argument. What you would say is 2, 3, 4 people. You basically try to increase the
No,
number of people. No,
one
1-to-1, it doesn't matter there because they're both equally human.
No,
So
I just need you
Yeah,
to
but I
answer
Okay,
know
the
well,
that
how
question.
one
about 1
person.
to 2?
I don't know.
It
the other
doesn't-
one.
So
No,
your
no, wait,
closest
wait.
like friend or family member is
No,
worth
wait.
like some random that you don't
Yeah,
know.
wait, hold on,
Realize
wait.
that's
Some
random.
random, for
Wait.
real.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
the problem is with this analogy
Yeah.
is personal value versus inherent value. Every human to me is inherently equal, regardless if they're American or not. So basically, you're the whole self-interest, right? Everybody's interested in pursuing their own lives, and when a person is being completely innocent, and then they're invaded by
I get
another
that.
group,
I get all of that. I just want you to answer my question. I get all of that. Everything you're just saying.
if
You have
it's like
three
if it's
options.
like
What Wordy?
So
What
one-
Wordy's
so
really
one to
saying?
one- No. Let's let Wordy say what he's saying. Right? You have three options. You are going to choose who dies or somebody random is going to die.
Okay.
There's only two people. There's whoever the person you're closest with, or there's a random other person that you don't know at all. What would you choose?
if it's 1-to-1, I would choose my own family member or friend
To die or to not die?
That's what
to not die.
Right.
Yes, that's-
Okay. So can I address this in not a stupid way? Because basically, I think that all right. So from an administrative level, the reason why I prioritize Americans over foreign nationals or whatever is because there's a certain element of control. We have national administration, we have local administration, we have communitarian administration. We can handle what's here. We can't like so. For instance, like Libya is a failed state. Okay. It would cost billions, maybe trillions of dollars to nation build Libya under like some kind of neo-colonial American fucking project. We don't have fucking time or energy for that shit. But if there's a terrorist organization in Libya that's doing suicide bombings, attacking the West Coast or attacking Americans or whatever, then fuck them, kill them. That like we don't have time to nation build all of Libya into a communist utopia. All right, that's the nationalism. The reason why though I object to GSU a little bit and Doobie a little bit is because what happens because we're geographically isolated in the Americas. We don't have to deal with Eurasia at all. Is that basically people in foreign countries can kind of take on this element like they're from fucking Narnia or like Lord of the Rings or some shit. Like it's some other fucking country that doesn't even exist. And so as a result, Like I'm on conversations about terrorism all the fucking time, and we basically shitpost about it. We talk about like robot dogs machine gunning people to death. We talk about fucking, sword bombs, cutting people's heads off and all that kind of shit. And while there's a certain element of my fucking 10-year-old war fucking playing with G.I. Joe self that thinks all that shit is badass, I think we also need to concede that these are real fucking human beings that are being blown the fuck up and shot the fuck up. And despite being from different cultures, they're fucking human. And that's where like that nationalist shit can jump the shark for me, where you're like, oh, well, we can just, fucking glass Afghanistan because it's not even a real place to me, the person who's lived in the continental United States my entire life. And that's my fucking beef.
Yeah, well, I don't think anybody here would agree to glassing another country for just to make our lives a little better.
Then why did we do
Samantha
it?
Banana. I've talked to Samantha
I don't
Banana,
think
so-
she means. I don't think she means.
Wait, why
Really
would we
quick- really
agree to
quickly.
glassing the entire country when that's basically what we did?
Because
I
they're
don't think
that's
what we did.
not true.
That's
What?
definitely not what
Wait,
we
really
did.
quick.
I mean,
Talking about
we
Japan
we
or
did.
Afghanistan?
I
So I
don't
think-
think we did a good thing.
I
but
would
that's
say
not
like
what we did.
killing
Oh, God.
1.2 million people and then doing a lot of bombings and killing a lot of innocent people and destabilizing the entire economic region is pretty fucking close, I would say.
That's on the
if not like
highest end
outright
of
glassing.
the.
No,
That
Sure,
is literally
but I'm
like
saying
the
is
highest
we
end of
killed
the
a
estimate.
significant amount of people there.
it's war.
Innocents. Yeah,
Should happen.
congratulations, it's war. Maybe we should try to avoid war if it's not going to be productive.
Where
We didn't
but
start it.
There's,
Fuck 'em.
there's okay, but there's a
But it
moral
made a
problem.
lot
Yeah,
of
well,
defense contractors a ton of money. What do
this-
you mean? It
no.
was productive.
No, god damn it. This is part of my frustration with like dealing with lefties because fuck. Like, so there is a moral difference between the United States military walking into Iraq, lining up fucking civilians and executing them on the fucking street versus going in there, destabilizing the government, trying to take part in de-Baathification, and then having Sunni and Shia militias play who can kill the most civilians today. There is a fucking moral difference
Okay,
between
I
these
will
huge
say I'm
difference.
being too hyperbolic. I will give you that. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But I will
Check
say
it.
is, yeah, I will
We
say
win,
is
Connor.
that the
Thanks.
amount of violence and invasions and policies we were enacting there and the barriers we're putting up for Afghanistans to get out of there through the SIV programs, the problem really comes is it was not productive. It did not do anything we really want until a couple years into the future. Like basically the amount of effort we commit to this to just like resolve this, I would much prefer the foreign internal defense policies Connor's always advocating for than this. And the problem comes is war as itself doesn't really solve what we want. If we want a nation build, constantly invading areas and constantly bombing areas makes it harder to set up a nation too.
But I just want to point this out. I know I'm talking a lot, but basically like there were multiple pro-democracy protests in Kabul after the Americans left, which like holy fucking shit. Like that's insane. Like
Yeah.
literally women in fucking hijabs walking down the street saying, no, we still want to work. We still want education. Under the threat of death, we want these things. Same thing. And there was even some men who also participated in pro-democracy protests. So what I would say is that I am completely as black-pilled as everybody else. Like I am absolutely terrified of what Afghanistan is going to be in the next 10 to 20 years. But there might be some seeds of hope here where like the Turkmen, the Tajiks, the Uzbeks, the Hazaras and all that kind of stuff, because they know what another regime can look like and the Taliban know that they can't just rule with an iron fist the way that they used to. This could have changes, but they might be decades in the making. And that's kind of where like I just want to like gray pill white people, a few people, that there's at least a few hundred, maybe a few thousand Afghans who are like, hey, on pain of death, I will protest for my right to live a better standard of living, which is they got more balls than me. I fucking tell you that.
Yeah, and they'll be killed because
also-
the Taliban agree with us that not all people are worth the same, right? They're going to see these people protesting for the democracy and their women's rights and shit. They're going to kill them. Right? It's already started
We'll see.
happening. There are videos of them shooting artists and shit and journalists, right? Like it's already happening.
We'll see.
And not only that, like,
yeah, I mean,
you also have
basically,
to talk when you're talking about the protests. You also have to talk about the fact that there's also a video of the Taliban like shooting AK-47s into protesters and stuff like that, or up in the air to try to disperse crowds and things like that. I just have to ask because I like overall your general stance on like this policing style of the military. What would you consider like what we're doing or what we like 9 months ago in Afghanistan, 3,000 troops there for support roles and air support, or what we're doing in Syria right now? Would you consider that like part of like what you would consider like policing as the military?
Yeah, potentially. So Wordy and I have talked about this in the past. I literally advocate for this every panel I'm on, where I talk about American geopolitics. It's a concept called foreign internal defense. Marines do it, American Special Forces do it, and it's basically where you have a few dozen guys. They train local forces in order to be able to carry out their own security operations. You provide them close air support. And another historical example that I bring up is the Flying Tigers in China. These were volunteer Western pilots with Western logistics that were able to provide close air support for the Chinese army while they were being invaded by the Japanese. This would not be expensive. It would be 80 to 90% less expensive than the way the war on terror was run. And then on top of that, you would have part of the problem with the invasion and then buildup model is that it's completely reliant on American power in order to exist. Whereas the foreign internal defense model, where you're training security forces in order to be able to stand on their own feet, and then you're providing them air support, if they're not able to win their own battles, if they don't have the ability to maintain political power within their own country, they never seize power in the first place. So that's kind of where, and then on top of that, it's way more voluntary. There would need to be people in the country, or even governments, even willing governments, who literally sign up and say, hey, United States, I have a security issue. I have Islamic jihadists here. I need assistance. Can you please come train my guys in order to deal with this problem? And also, either train or consult or logistically support my Air Force, because let's face it, in the modern era, air power pretty much trumps all. So that's kind of my thing, is like, we do this like crazy conventional, crazy expensive military apparatus where we can literally do the same thing probably for fucking 10 or 20 cents on the dollar and still be developing new technologies and still build like unilateral and bilateral and trilateral alliances. So for me, there's no real losers here. Even the military industrial complex would do fine, because they would still be responsible for doing R&D and developing new technologies. So I'm always looking for the win-win-win-win-win, and people hate
So the frustration for me, though, Connor, is like, we've had this conversation before, and like the whole concept, right? Looking through the Taliban is like we kind of did that, not more than probably what you're proposing. But the problem comes is like we had that conflict between the two competing groups of like the Sunni and the Shia, whatever. And after they took down the major person in power, they're like in conflict, like they no longer have anybody to fight. And then from there, we're like, hey, the Soviets are coming in, and we're like, well, we got to support the Taliban now. And they took over power, and we see the consequence of that happening today. And for me, the problem really comes is the reasoning, the motivations behind the people who make these policy decisions, is they aren't reliable. We can't trust them. And really, like, I know they're going to have power. They're going to make these decisions anyways. But I would really want to reform intelligence operations. This way we can kind of more effectively gauge information on the ground. And two is like, try to remove that personal bias from policymakers. And I think trying to at least like actively push against them, like, hey, if you're going to do this and that, like, that's the real problem, is they have this authority and they just get to really make these decisions unchecked.
But this is my problem with the worldview. It is basically like it demands angels of human beings, and we just don't have them. All we have is human beings. So we kind of have to be realistic about the power games that we play. And this is one of the things that like so there's like American exceptionalism, where America is the best thing since fucking sliced bread. Everybody else can suck a dick and like all that kind of shit. Well, there's kind of the inverse of American exceptionalism on the lefty side, where we can do no good ever. And on top of that, all of the world's problems are our fault. And I think that's like a really kind of naive way to look at the world. So for instance, Afghanistan, we supported the Mujahideen. We gave them a few $1 million. We gave them Stinger missiles in order to blow up fucking Russian helicopters and all that kind of shit. And then out of the civil war that ensued, I'll wrap up in a second, Prime. Out of the civil war that ensued, the Taliban emerged. Well, during that civil war, there were three geopolitical players that I remember, and they were Pakistan, Iran, and Oman. So the second that we backed out, they all backed militias that basically caused a civil war that created the Taliban. So realistically, what I'm saying is, vacuum, and you have
Man.
Not again.
As soon as he talks about the CIA and their actions, oh boy.
Yeah.
Try it again, Connor. Give it another try.
Connor is ex-military and an ex-cop. They really might be messing with what he's about to say.
Oh man.
You ever heard of Bob Lazar, folks? They
Man,
canceled him too.
I'm glad I don't have the ex-cop thing.
Think about it.
Give it a try, then we'll go to Doobie.
Yeah. So basically, what I was saying is that power abhors a vacuum, and America is not the only player. And I think it's naive to think that we're the only player. So
Yeah,
that's really what-
Doobie,
that's what-
Doobie.
If I-
Doobie, no. Doobie and Pan, did you have your hand up? All right.
Yeah, Connor, if you go on like that again, I'll pull the switch again. Like, you got to be more concise. So, what I'm wondering is like, so I do mean to pull the conversation back a little bit, but I asked a conversation earlier about I asked a question earlier about using a crisis to achieve some political end. And it seems like you guys are against it. But I was listening, and there's a lot of moralizing happening, a lot of rambling, but I don't think we got any good reasons not to do this. In fact, this is something that happens even in like national politics here in the United States. You know, there's a school shooting. Oh God, 20 kids died. We need to restrict gun rights. You know, there's a pandemic. Oh God, we need to restrict personal liberties. Now we need to require people to wear a mask or whatever. Or we need to have you need to have the passport to go out of the to go to school or to go into a government building. You need to have like a vaccine fucking pass, whatever, right? So like, I feel like this is something that happens all the time. I don't think it's usually a problem for lefties or even people on the right. Right, when some tragedy happens that they can use toward their political ends. So I'm wondering why this is any different. Now, you can say that it's because, you know, oh God, we're going to war, right? But I mean, yeah, people are going to die. But if at the end of the day you can make the case and you can do the work to make sure that we're better off, and maybe people on the other side of the world are better off and hate us a little less after going through that war and going through that process, why not do it? Like, why is that an issue?
Okay, so Doobie,
Wait,
I'm
Pam-
just gonna Mr. Frog. I don't think that wanting to have people wear masks and get vaccinated during the middle of a pandemic is the same thing as this is worse actually than my analogy earlier about what if you found your significant other in bed with somebody else. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Well, okay, so
we have
let
to
me
disqualify this.
I disagree,
right
but
off the bat.
I disagree, but I'll give you an easier one, right? So one thing that lefties have been doing is that because of the pandemic and because of the way that people are suffering during the pandemic, hey, it's time for UBI. It's time for universal health care, right? And this, yeah, okay, so you agree with that. You're using this crisis where hundreds of thousands of people have died and saying, hey, let's use this to further our political ends, right?
Yes,
so why shouldn't we do that?
Rates?
So for
Okay,
me,
Or higher employment.
Just to be clear, I'm a lefty and I'm not for UBI.
Let's go.
I think the problem is when you create the crisis.
Let's
I
go.
think that's the problem.
Let's go to Pan.
So I just wanted to say, Connor, that it's the reason that we seem to not be able to do any good in the rest of the world isn't because of some self-hating, like, oh, America sucks, we're the worst. It's because, as you said, the Middle East is fucking Narnia to us. The people here, we don't really give a shit. The people, like, if we compare, like, how interested we are in Afghanistan to how interested the Taliban are in Afghanistan, guess what? The Taliban is more interested in Afghanistan. So the reason that, you know, there's this thing where, oh, we don't seem to be able to do any good in the world isn't, you know, I don't think that's just self-hating lefties. And I say this as a very right-leaning person. I think the reason is because we don't understand what's going on there domestically, and we don't care enough to find out what's going on there domestically. So I just wanted to respond to that.
Well, it doesn't matter insofar as until it affects us, right? So if they were oppressing women and selling children into slavery, whatever the fuck they're doing, but they didn't attack us, and if we wanted something from them, they gave it to us, and we wouldn't give a fuck. I think, right? There are plenty of places in the world where this is the case. So yeah, I mean, I don't think I really don't think that's the issue. It seems like, yeah, they're more interested in what's going on there. We're not really interested until it kind of, you know, comes into our lawn, basically.
Well, and that. Sorry, Rory, go ahead.
Okay, so I was just wanting to say specifically, Connor, is I'm going to be hypercritical of my nation, right? I live here. I see all the things we've done, and I'm going to be hypercritical. And I can admit we've done good things, right? We, you know, better women's rights in Afghanistan. And the real problem comes though is like even if when we do leave, other nations are going to try to fill the power vacuum. I would say is if we're going to have power and if we're going to leverage our influence, I personally would like more accountability kind of outside the centralized power system, right? If the president is going to make actions, I would like more accountability outside of the political body, kind of just be able to like critique and deal with it. And that's the issue for me more than anything, is that these actions are taken and they're just kind of done, and there's really no measurable way to understand like what they're doing, their motivations, and kind of all these different factors that apply.
There's there's a Roman concept called apotheosis. It's basically like when Caesar dies, he becomes a god. And throughout all of history, no matter how shitty Caesar was, no Caesar ever denied another Caesar apotheosis when he died. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because power in this system does not check itself, because it knows when it's its turn at bat, whatever institutional reforms are put in place in order to check that power will be used against that as well. So what I'm saying is, when it comes to like holding Donald Rumsfeld accountable as a war criminal, or George Bush accountable as a war criminal, the reason why Obama basically ignored the fucking CIA torture documents and ignored prosecuting George W. Bush or Donald Rumsfeld is because he was going to do drone strikes fucking within 6 months, and he didn't want to be caught up in the same fucking legal bullshit that he set up in order to ensnare the power that had preceded him.
Yeah, so but that's the real issue in terms of the political body, instead of like creating like third party systems.
But I don't think there's any examples in history of what you're looking for.
Wait.
Yeah.
So the problem comes is there are two options. We can either try to institute more reforms or whatever, or we just let them keep fucking doing this. Do you think we should just let them do this, keep doing it? Is that what you think?
So, hot take. As long as they stay a world superpower and we don't have to worry about people showing up on our soil, it's sad, but I don't care. Like, it's really bad. Like, it's really, really bad. Like, the government has done terrible things to black people, right? So I'm not like this, yay, hey, the government is all virtuous. But like, at the end of the day, as long as I don't feel national security is threatened and they're not doing things that are just obviously bad, if they're using like an attack on America to respond, and they respond somewhat more drastically, I'm fine with it. Like,
just to kind of back up what JS's saying, I or like to reinforce what he's saying. I think that people tend to get caught up on like the moral issues when we're talking about this stuff, and I think the reality is we should kind of disregard that when it's necessary to achieve, what's best for us, right? What's best for the country.
But if that means the countries that we're talking about.
If that means that we don't if that means that we don't send soldiers into Nigeria to save those 200 little girls that were swept up by Boko Haram or whatever, hey, that's what that means, right? If that means that we are okay with Saudi Arabia having basically slaves while we're doing business with them, but it benefits us to do business with them, hey, that's what we do, right? I think at the end of the day, this kind of moral grandizing is kind of silly.
Can I?
Well, then we can never call ourselves the greatest country in the world, and we should never call ourselves morally superior, and we should be open about that fact.
Wait, hold on, we are morally superior.
In any way morally superior.
No, it's because we don't have infinite resources. There's going to be bad actors. There's going to be bad people. There's going to be bad things that happen. We've tried to be the global police, and what's happened is we've ignored people at home that have issues, right? So, like, I don't think these things are feasible. If I thought there was a pathway where we could be this super, like, we almost have to just be. What y'all are advocating for is more like nationalistic and
it's total domination of the world.
Yeah, it's more colonial than what like you think our position is.
I never advocated for nationalism, dude.
Wait.
But
why not?
How do we save those poor little girls in Afghanistan who are going to be beaten and tortured for wanting to go to school without totally dominating the country?
So it's like real easy. Is you devise systems where you can briefly enter in without having to like fuck up an entire
what if those
region.
Countries don't want you to?
Yeah, doing that in Afghanistan would require a massive cultural shift. It's like you just don't kill people. The people that replace them will also not want little girls to go to school, right? So like, it
that's why
requires
I don't know. We were trying to channel a bunch of refugees.
We give them a way out.
Let's go, Pan.
We take refugees.
Pan?
I feel like there's kind of an inconsistency here on Doobie and Gambits. On one hand, we're supposed to be super Machiavellian and calculating, but on the other hand, it's okay to go to war in Afghanistan, even though a lot more of our soldiers are going to die in 9/11 because, our emotions matter. It's okay to do a disproportionate
National
response because
security
that's what we
matters,
want.
right?
No,
That's
that's
not
you're
national
missing.
security.
It's
We
not
let,
just
let
our
him finish. Let him
emotions.
finish.
died,
Pan, go ahead.
right? Like
Yeah,
we
go
had
ahead.
10, I think 10,000 soldiers die, right? That's 3 times as many as died in 9/11, and the world isn't any more safe. So if we want to be this Machiavellian calculating superpower, well, shouldn't we, do a solution like not go to war or do some sort of like, I don't know, just do something small to quell America's
no.
appetite?
So have you ever seen or read Ender's Game?
Yes.
I watched the movie,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, so one of my favorite scenes in that movie, right, is when there's a bully picking on him.
Spoilers,
And
everyone.
there's a bully picking on Ender, right? He hits the bully, and when the bully's on the floor, he breaks his leg, right? And when he's asked why he did this, right, he says, "Well, the punch was to stop the fight. Breaking his leg was intended to stop all future fights." Right. So I think you could do something similar in Afghanistan. That's at the start of this. I don't know if you remember. I said that I think the initial response going to war was the correct response. The incorrect response after that was how we handled the occupation, right? Trying to make sure that they had some control, trying to make sure that they felt like they had the same things. No, fuck that. We should have totally dominated the country, colonized the country, and then
And then
westernize all of it, westernize every institution they had. And over time, this would have been a very long-term project. You had a cultural shift that you need to make sure that those little girls and those gay people aren't being oppressed in that country.
Wait, if I can respond off that,
Amazing.
hey, everybody else. I read the book.
And more importantly,
no,
sorry, one more sentence, I promise. Just more importantly than that, than making sure they aren't oppressed, that makes sure that there's not the atmosphere there and the culture there that would lead to them wanting to bomb the United States and seeing the United States as like the great devil or whatever the fuck and whatever. It would lead to us having more control in this place, so we don't need to fuck with them as much. The culture looks a lot closer to ours. So long term, future battles are avoided.
Hello, science fiction nerd here. Oh, no, everybody else, shut up. So, science fiction nerd here, Ender's Game literally makes the exact opposite point you're trying to assert. The dude came in and permanently crippled that dude. And then basically that analogy was comparing to him fucking taking over and killing an entire species. So the real problem comes here is your analogy doesn't stand up because the book makes the exact opposite point. He eliminated an entire species that was seen as a threat whenever they hadn't been invading, they had been doing all these things for decades at this point. So the real problem comes is appropriate response. You can stop a threat, but if you come in and permanently ruin a region or permanently destabilize a region, you know what's going to happen is you're going to sow sentiment and violence against you. You're going to create more terrorism. In this instance, if we're invading these areas, you know what's going to happen? Every other country is going to hate us. And then when China invades us, everybody's like, fuck you, America. That's literally what's going to happen.
God damn it.
I just don't think that, okay, so this whole thing about us going in there and being able to assert this power upon a people who, when we tried to give them the power, I just don't think that that's fully well thought of. How many troops are we trying to send in? 200, 300,000? How many trillions of dollars would we have spent on that? 5, 10? I mean, I don't know where that stops. And then, hey, hold on. Why not? I mean, Afghanistan's bad. Yeah. But hold on. There's other countries that are doing similar shit as well. Do we invade them after?
Yeah. So
that seems but then also we don't care about them.
Yeah.
We only care about Americans.
Yeah. Captain A. Jones, I kind of want to address this because weirdly enough, I agree with Doobie from a descriptive perspective. I just don't think it's something we should do. So what I agree with him on is that so we've only had between 10 and 15,000 troops in Afghanistan for the past 15 to 20 years. As a matter of fact, I think the average troop count was 12,000 or something like that. That's not a lot of troops. We were spending about $50 billion a year. I think it's 0.03% of the budget. This is something that we could have done in perpetuity. I don't want to do it in perpetuity because basically, $50 billion might not be a lot to Uncle Sam, but it's a lot of money to me. And basically what I would say is that Doobie is right that this would be a 100-year project. We've done the same thing in Japan. We've done the same thing in Germany. We've done the same thing. You could have a Marshall Plan for Afghanistan. But to your point, what you've said is There are cultural differences, there's regional differences, and if we're claiming some kind of moral right to monopolize a culture and colonialize it and make them just like America Town in Central Asia, there's a whole fuckload of places that are doing just as nefarious shit on a day-to-day basis. Why are they not on our radar? And then to GSU's point, he basically said that like logistics and efforts are not limitless, and it seems like the appetite for war and the appetite for nation building is limitless, but like but only as long as somebody else is doing it. Like as long as you're not the person going to Afghanistan, as long as you're not the person going to Iraq, then it doesn't really matter. So that's kind of where I think that the reason why I talk about dialing in the war on terror to be a police action, counterterrorism, working in conjunction with other countries, developing foreign internal defense, still developing technology, but not invading with hundreds of thousands of troops. Iraq, we had like 250,000. Afghanistan, I think we had like 50,000, then scaled it down to 10. The reason why I advocate for these things is because the lesson we should learn is that, one, we didn't achieve our goals. Two, we risked the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. Three, we directly or indirectly killed a few 100,000 people. And four, we spent I think between $2 and $4 trillion for basically nothing. Iraq is now a proxy state of Iran, and Afghanistan is now back in the hands of the Taliban. We haven't really changed that much for a lot of blood and a lot of treasure.
Don't forget China.
I would say that
The existential threat of China. The existential threat of China is making us real concern.
You could even say things have gotten worse because instead of Iraq being able to be this, albeit very pesky thing, like a nation on the world stage, instead they're now basically right next to being a failed state. I mean.
I don't want to necessarily go that far because, for instance, I want to say Afghanistan's GDP or whatever has increased either 10 or 20 times since the United States invasion. So basically, there actually has been a pretty heavy development of the domestic economy. I just don't know how much of that is going to survive Taliban governance. And whether or not the Taliban, so for instance, Doobie and other people were talking about the reprisal killings over the past couple of months. I don't know if the Uzbeks, Tajiks, and Hazaras are going to be able to actually use their power in order to negotiate an actual representative government, or if the Taliban, it's just going to be fucked. And we have to wait 10 or 20 years to figure that answer out.
Just to nitpick the 10x, just to nitpick really quick that 10x thing that you just said. 10x can look like a lot, but when you have something that's really small and then you 10x it, it's still really small. So
no one cares. Okay, fuck you.
You know what? Fuck you, frog. Hey, you little fascist, you fascist frog.
Can I answer Connor's question? So you asked me where it stops, right? So if we keep doing, if we colonize these places, there are a lot of other countries that could be argued that should be colonized. I think so long as a country is not affecting us in a negative way, isn't standing in the way of our interests, leave them alone. I think actually, first on the chopping block for me would be Mexico, obviously. Then beyond that, right? They something comes up and we find it be profitable or long term would suit our interests to invade Nigeria or something. Then hey, that's what we got to do.
Hey, have you heard of my
the Monroe Doctrine to destabilize Latin America? We've been doing that forever.
Yeah, but that's not the same as building it up. Have you heard my invade down to the Panama Canal plan, Doobie? Are you a fan?
I haven't heard it, but that's something I've actually thought of.
Doobie, I do want to make a critique. I want to try to make.
Okay, Mexico has a lot of fucking natural resources. There's no reason that those people should be.
So I do want to make a critique. The problem that comes with in terms of colonialism is when you look at Pax Britannica, right? Is Britain invaded all these other countries like India, and through these process of building these economic relationships with imperial power, right? You take a lot of resources out and you kind of sow national tension. And this is a reality. Catastrophe will happen to where a nation can no longer command the same amount of power that it once did. So in the process, as a nation falters, loses its influence or whatever, you know what happens? The colonial nations, they say, fuck you, and they end the relationship. And then from there, permanently, that nation is permanently hindered because of the problems that it set itself up for. So building your economy around this colonial intent isn't really productive because
I wouldn't just
you get a comparatively short-term benefit, but you're going to have a significant long-term negative externality.
No, so long-term, my plan would be to totally annex Mexico. right? Invade militarily, help them take out the cartels, and then make them part of the United States. Right? Because I love
Help
Mexicans
them
so
take
much.
out the cartels.
I
What the ones
unlike you guys,
fueling the fucking
unlike you
cartels.
guys.
What are you
Well,
talking
okay,
about?
no, Captain
If
Jones.
we fucking
Captain
legalize
Jones.
the one, if we
No, no,
just
no.
made drugs
Okay,
legal, that would fuck boom, cartels gone.
Exactly.
Captain
No
Jones,
cartels
you-
ever.
you specifically are the
talking
one
about,
fueling the
frog?
cartels by giving them your money to buy fucking drugs that then funds the cartels.
First
So
of
you
all, I get my
specifically are
weed
doing
from
that.
fucking
Nah, fuck you.
California grown organics.
We all know you
all
don't.
right? So
We
don't
all
even
know you
try.
don't only do weed. Okay,
You
shut
see
up.
what you did, Prime. You
I
see
haven't
what
done
you've done.
drugs
No.
in a long time, unfortunately.
Don't talk
try-
about funding the
don't
cartels
even
when you've
bring
been
it up,
doing it for
okay?
decades. Shut up.
Okay.
Do you
Look,
know
I
anybody?
asked-
All
You
right,
sound
okay.
depressed about
kind
that.
of,
For as long as
I
we
don't-
keep illegal immigrants.
I don't
Okay,
fund the cartel.
okay.
I only fund my local drug
Great.
dealers.
Well, thanks for that. We're going to go on to our next topic. If you are just finding this channel, if you're enjoying this conversation, hit that follow button. Right now, make sure notifications are on since I do this 6 nights a week. Don't want you to miss out. Hit that follow button right now. Make sure notifications are on so you know I'm going live. Exclamation social chat to follow us on social media. Jump into our Twitter and follow us there. Jump to our Discord where we have all these conversations. They all happen on our Discord. We want you to be a part of that. And then go to our YouTube where you'll find the VODs. The VODs live there, not here. So if you want to see something from the past or you missed any of this, go to our YouTube and like, comment, and subscribe. All right. So moving on to our next topic. The Biden administration has decided to support local school districts who are defying state bans on mask mandates. Biden will be providing funding directly to the schools where that funding has been denied by governors. Do you support this move? Should we be celebrating the federal government undermining local control during a health crisis? What if Trump was in office and he was providing funds to schools that refused a mask mandate? So yeah, wanted to take a look at this. It seems like people on the left are cheering these actions. That Biden's helping these schools getting around these bans. But you know, should we? I mean, should that be the case? Should we be more concerned about local control? And you know, what if the shoe was on the other foot? All right, so we'll get started with instructions. Captain A. Jones.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, big lefty. Yeah, I do definitely applaud the Biden administration for their newest actions against the pandemic that is raging across the world. Those are important caveats because, like, ingrained in this question is this, well, what if it was the other side argument? The other side doesn't have a good argument. Okay. Being against masks and being against vaccines just makes you anti-science. It just makes you, I've been seeing on Twitter, what would the founding fathers have done? I don't think the founding fathers would be against masks and vaccines. That's what I don't think. I would find it hard pressed to think that that Hamilton would have written that masks are taking away my freedoms because of a global pandemic if he had known that masks and vaccines were the number one thing that stopped this thing. So that's just dumb on its face. So yeah, go Biden.
Wordy.
It's hard, right? Is basically I'm an anarchist. I hate the state, but I hate COVID more in this instance. Basically, there's a concept of positive and negative freedom. Freedom from and freedom to. In this instance, it's freedom from being sick. It's freedom from a plague. It's freedom from a fucking pandemic. And that instance is, I ideally would like local communities, but unfortunately, local communities are so dependent on power. So in this instance, we should try and move towards this. We've been patient, right? We say, hey, the vaccines are free. Go and take them. We say, hey, hey, your business should, probably do this, and we're pushing it and being patient, and people are still refusing to get the vaccine. And you know what happens? More variants develop, more people get sick, more people die. We're having about the same amount of deaths as we are back in January 2021. So the problem comes is we've exhausted every other option at this point, and we've done everything we can to assert, hey, do this. It's good for you. And at this point, all other options are exhausted. I want to live a life. I want to live a normal life. I want to go outside without having to wear a mask. So what you have to do? You gotta fucking get the vaccine so we can get rid of coronavirus at this point. That's just how I feel. I'm just so fucking exhausted of these murderers.
Counterpoints.
Yeah, I'm happy that the coronavirus sucks, but I'm happy that the one thing that it's done is it's black pilled wordy on anarchism. That's fucking based. So the fucking in reference to this issue, it's actually not local control. This is a part of the problem with the narrative. So I live in the state of Florida. I forget my douchebag of a governor's name, but basically what he said is he will punish by withholding salaries from teachers for school districts that enforce masks in their schools. But what's happening is at an even more local level, these districts are saying that they want to protect their students, and as a result, they're going to enforce masks. So when we say that the governor is his rights as somebody to exert local gubernatorial control or whatever is being violated, what's being violated even more is the districts to democratically or pseudo-democratically decide what they're going to do in order to protect the health of their students. So this is a bullshit talking point from Republicans. And if you really had a fucking problem with masks, then you should go talk to your school board, and they're probably going to call you a fucking asshole. So yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at. And what I would say too is that I was in the military. I got stabbed with like 20 different diseases that I have no idea. Like I'm pretty sure mosquitoes don't like me anymore because I have so much poison inside my body. And what I would say is that's fine. You don't want to get vaccinated. That's fine. But guess what? If you want to go to a fucking public school, your bitch ass is doing fucking virtual learning because you shouldn't be a health risk to students and faculty. And we'll make accommodations for you. We'll make accommodations for you, but you don't have a right to necessarily be there in person if you're going to be a risk to everybody else. And I'll leave it there.
Truly false.
Yeah, what Connor said, it not only is it 20 vaccines, it's an assembly line, shots on both sides. You're just walking through it. But overall, I'm not a big fan of like the federal government coming in and doing this. I have more of an issue with the state coming in and having a problem with it first. So now that the federal government now we have a situation where the federal government has to come and step in front of the state from doing something stupid. Overall, fuck COVID. I'm so done with it. We've had the solution for fucking 9 months. Vaccines, masks, social distancing. Just do that. We're at the second highest case level since the pandemic. We're at the third highest deaths on 7-day rolling averages for both since the pandemic started, and it's because people are being dumb. Overall, we have solutions. It's free. It's in your local grocery store, and for schools, we don't have it. We don't have the option for 12 and under to get vaccinated. And if you want to go off only FDA approved, 16 and under to get vaccinated. So we still have to do something because these kids are still getting COVID. They're still spreading it to other people. So we still have to prevent the spread somehow, or else we're going to be in the same position that we are. So overall, yeah, I think Biden has to do this because the state's kind of forced his hand.
QB.
So yeah, I agree. I feel like this is another one of those examples, right? I kind of mentioned this earlier, of us not letting a good crisis go to waste. I think this is a perfect opportunity, right, to have the federal government begin to undermine state and local control of public schools, which is something that needs to happen. Which is something that needs to happen if we're ever going to get to a situation where schools aren't being funded primarily by property taxes in the local area, and they're funded at the federal level, which I think is necessary to fix a lot of the schools in this country. So I think it's a good thing. I think we should definitely use this pandemic to undermine state and local control of schools and pass it over to the federal government.
Jason.
Muted, buddy.
Oh, beautiful. I agree with him.
So number one, what Counterpoint was saying, he kind of hit the nail on the head with a lot of that. I totally agree that it's an infringement on the districts and the municipalities' rights that the governors are stepping in and trying to ban mask mandates when in fact it should be up to the districts to decide. They're the ones closest to the students. They're the ones closest to the families, and absolutely they can judge better what should happen in their communities than the states in some of these cases. Overall, I think every school should have a mask mandate. Every school should have a vaccination mandate for their teachers and staff, and students at appropriate age to do so. This is backed up by 1905 Supreme Court decision about vaccinations. This is further backed up by the fact that Washington himself demanded inoculations for smallpox and did so using military force. So this is nothing new. This is something we should expect. The simple fact that Biden's been nice about the way he's actually doing this is what's surprising, because he could have been a lot more aggressive about it. He's got the standing. There's a Supreme Court precedent for it. So kudos to him. One thing I'll say is I think that people who are shy to get the vaccine are going to be more shy as a result of this, and you will have some pushback and a certain undercurrent of opposition that's going to be really loud and really vocal for a while. So I'd kind of like to see how that's going to play out.
Pam?
Yeah, I think what Connor said was extremely important. We're giving, the local people more control. As long as I think, as long as schools are funded by local property tax, local schools should be able to decide whether or not to have a mask mandate. If the shoe was on the other foot, so to say, I would still say that I think that schools in Republican districts that don't want a mask mandate have that right as well. You can't really force populations who don't agree with the law to go along with it. They'll just not enforce it anyways. So I think it's silly to try to force state control on an issue that is completely local. So I'm not a huge fan of the Biden coming in and funding national funding of local schools. But I will say this is good. More local control is better. So I support it.
Okay. GSU.
Yeah, so on this, I'm a big fan of mask mandates. I'm a big fan of social distancing. I'm a big fan of even a shutdown. I'm cool with all those mask mandates. Absolutely think it's stupid. But so in this situation, I kind of agree with almost the sentiment everybody's had. I think this should be something controlled at the local level. I don't understand people that are against mask mandates. Maybe somebody in chat or somewhere can inform us on this opinion. It's not as invasive as something like a vaccine, so I just don't get it. I don't understand the argument for not wearing a mask during a respiratory pandemic. But yeah, so I don't like it at all, really, but I support what Joe Biden is doing. The other part of what he's trying to do is push all private companies with over 100 employees to force vaccination or be charged like 14,000 per violation. I think that's absolutely stupid, and maybe we'll talk about that too. But yeah.
I do want to say specifically, Connor, it's not that I'm black-pilled on anarchism. I'm black-pilled on people a little bit, but I'm more black-pilled on the literal state, on the literal government that had an entire president for like a good year and a half say vaccines cause autism, vaccines lead to they don't cause death or whatever, the COVID's a hoax. Like basically, as humans suck, but you know what sucks worse? A person in power that's spreading this conspiracy and doing it basically unchecked. That is like basically, it's really frustrating. Is like these people didn't do it on their own; they were driven towards this behavior. And basically, at this point, I'm like, that fucking sucks. And it's just like, guys, we've done everything we can at this point. We've been so patient. You just want to fucking kill everybody. That's just my frustration.
But is this not, so I'm not trying to derail the conversation completely, but at the same time, is this not indicative, because I've been bringing this up a lot recently, that politics is, I mean, we even look at the Twitch.tv space. Politics has to be like 80% cults of personality and 20% good ideas. Like I'm not bullshitting with that, because basically, like if you look at that, Trump was literally saying, we have Operation Warp Speed. This vaccine is going to be the best. It's going to be the best thing ever. We paid the best.
Got him again.
The best internet connection.
Dude, we stop
Trump's
doing that
getting
to
you,
him,
too.
man.
Damn CIA.
Connor is
again.
coming at us live from a cave in Afghanistan, reporting on the crisis,
being
the
held
ongoing
captive?
crisis.
I Yeah, he's frozen. Okay, so we'll go to someone
Oh,
else.
I want to ask the rest of the panel because I feel like a lot of people didn't really answer the question of what they would support if the shoe was on the other foot. So I just want to ask directly to the other members of the panel: if Trump was president and states mandated masks and local school districts wanted to go against it, would you still support their local autonomy?
Nope.
If
No,
if
no, they
It
wouldn't.
doesn't follow the science.
Wait.
It doesn't follow what's rationally, what's rational in the public health and in the public interest.
Okay,
So
so wait,
your
you guys don't care
position's
at all
going to
about
sway
local
based
control.
on what.
so in this instance, for me,
No, they don't.
so
I knew
Pan,
y'all
Pan,
were gonna run into
here's
this.
here's my
panel,
argument.
Kyle.
Okay, so ideally, I would like local control, but the problem comes is I have a set of ethics I want to pursue. I believe people should have the freedom from being sick all the time or being sick with COVID, right? So the problem then comes is if I'm pursuing local control, but then the locality is like literally fucking like, oh, we're gonna basically inject a bunch of ivermectin into our bodies and fucking get everybody else sick, and it's like, huh. In that instance, it's like, well, other localities, can you like deal with this? And if they're like, no, we can't because we don't have any real influence on them, and it's like, well, shit, who's in charge here? Yo, you in charge? Get this shit ready. And that's my emphasis. I would like local control. I would like to maximize local autonomy. However, when local autonomy is leading to real deaths, real consequences, I'm willing to violate my principles to try and maximize my principles in another aspect.
Well, your real principle isn't
Political
local
views are
control.
contextual,
Your real principle is pushing your ideologies, not local control. That's
Everybody's
not fun.
principle is pushing their ideology. What does that mean?
No,
Not mine.
no. I'm perfectly like I absolutely hate abortion. I think it's complete murder. But I've
Why are
recently
you on this
changed-
panel then?
and I don't think the
If you're not
state
pushing
should-
your principles.
Wait,
To
can you
talk
listen?
about it and
There's some
to
There's some
discuss
people that
things, but
just
it doesn't
because
mean
they
that
have it. Yeah, just because I have an idea and I think that's the best way that society should operate doesn't mean that I think the state should be imbued with the power to ensure that everybody acts in the way that I want. I think that's gross. I think that's like
Yeah,
the
I don't
path
think
to
I don't think the
authoritarianism.
state should be imbued with its power, but unfortunately they are, so I have to live with the state as it is.
Well, okay. So it turns out I was running off of Wi-Fi the whole time. I'm on a hard line now, so hopefully that solves some of the issues. I'm going to blame my dog who's sleeping by the internet. So it's his fault, not mine. But basically what I was going to say is this is my problem when we talk about like these principles like states' rights or local control or pure democracy or something like that. Well, no offense, but like at least a quarter of the population is dumb as fuck. Like seriously. So, and it doesn't take much to get a bunch of dumb fucking people to agree to a bunch of nefarious bullshit. And this is why I'm a statist, is because I think that there have to be people who are in charge who basically come out and they say, hey, listen, we've talked to people. We think this is the right move. We got to make decisions. And then I also believe in like a representative republic, because I think that these powerful factions have to be able to fight these ideas out in the public sphere so we can hold power accountable. But this is what I'm saying with this issue in particular, is that Republicans are violating their own stated principles, pretending that they're trying to get local control, but they're not. The school districts are saying we want masks because we want to do whatever is possible in order to safeguard our faculty and staff, some of whom are vaccinated and some of whom are not. And it's the governors who are fucking coming out and saying, nope, you're not allowed to impose this on people. So literally they're claiming local control, but it's bullshit. It's a veneer. It's rhetoric to forward a fucking agenda. And that's where I feel like the right wing needs to fucking cut through. If you actually value local control, then you need to call bullshit, because it's not local control. It's just the guy who lines up with your ideology.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
fuck the Republican Party.
Yeah, like
So-
I don't know if you have to. Not to
Pan,
change
I
the
have-
subject.
I have-
Actually, you know
I
what?
have-
Fuck changing the
No,
subject.
no, no.
I'm not
Captain
gonna-
A. Jones,
You're right,
hold on,
you're
Captain.
right. I'm sorry. Republicans are people too. I apologize.
Captain A. Jones, finish your point. Yeah.
I was gonna change the subject, but then I had a point before that I was gonna say. I disagree with Wordy's take on that, because I feel like I'm a pragmatist, and in that vein, though, I'm gonna tie it all together. In that vein of being a pragmatist, that's even more like if you're just like a practical person who looks at vaccines like a rational human being. Like, didn't we all get shots like for pneumococcal hepatitis, like tetanus, stuff like that? Like, we all got vaccines for that stuff. I
Yeah.
don't understand the big hesitancy of a new vaccine during a fucking global pandemic. Like that makes sense
Well,
to
a
get
vaccine that
that.
has 20 years of tech behind it, 20 years of research,
Right.
20 years of application. It's not a new vaccine, and that's what I think keeps getting mixed up. Is people have
Wait.
put that out in the sphere. Oh, this is new. This is brand new. Oh, don't get it. It's scary. It's spooky stuff. It's DNA genetic manipulation and shit.
It is.
That's not what it is. Like not on the
Wait,
face
you
of
looped
it.
in, you looped in a whole bunch of things to make your original false statement sound better, right? The people that believe that this thing is going to modify your DNA, yeah, they're wild and crazy, right? But saying that this isn't new is ridiculous.
Yeah, I think just like it's new to people, and like whether it's
been
new or not
using
in
it
terms
for
of the
20
science, like it doesn't
years.
matter. But I'm talking about like the general public and trying to message to them in the correct way. Like I think we should have known our audience way better than we did. We should never have told the American people that masks protect other people from you. We should have told them that masks protect you from other people. Everyone would have fucking worn it. Okay.
But like,
Facts.
but hold
No.
on, can I?
Ken's here with me in the same state. He knows exactly what's happening.
But Jason, I want to point this out to you though, is like so for instance, like when you hear that can be off-putting to the people who are skeptical, because if they're going to say that like COVID-19, it's a new disease, mRNA technology might have been around for the past 20 years, but these are the whole reason why we had Operation Warp Speed was to develop new vaccinations. These weren't things that we just had lying around.
We
So
come out with new
basically,
iterations for the flu vaccine every single year. Every single year, it's a
Okay.
new
Those are
iteration.
mRNA.
So
Okay,
are you
true.
scared
Flu
of every
vaccine
new
is a
iteration
mRNA.
of the flu vaccine?
Okay, but
flu vaccine?
I'm pretty sure mRNA has had like super limited application for the past 20 years, and it's largely been research based. I'm pretty sure that 2 of the 3 vaccines are mRNA based. But what I'm trying to say is the skepticism or whatever, we should be trying to alleviate that skepticism through for the people who are like good faith, basically. And what I mean by that is, so for instance, we had.
Yes.
Wi-Fi
Oh, no.
kicked in again.
Damn it.
Yeah, I
Okay.
warned him about being concise.
If his internet cuts out, I will ask Pan a question. So just wait a second.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Save me
Okay.
from the question.
Yeah, Pan. So I have a question. So local community is like, yo, we need masks, we need all this shit. And then the state's like, no. And then from there, like as an anarchist, I want the local autonomy, right? I want them to make that decision, like the local group. When you have a governing power structure says no, and then they're like, well, shit. And then they try to like follow that. And if the state government's like, no, we're not going to give you any access to this, how do we resolve that? I have to ask that question. How do we resolve that? If without like the fucking
Without
federal
having
government.
like a higher power.
Yeah.
Well, I
We
mean,
should see
generally, I would just
that.
say non-enforcement of the law. I mean, if police are local, everything is local, right? If enough of your community is really against the law, enforcing the law is really hard.
What about state troopers and removing federal funding? How do you respond to that whenever you vitally need that income in order to have a sustainable school system?
I mean, I guess I'd have to think about that. I don't
Well,
know.
I
I
think-
guess ideally, I would hope that schools, would
Wait,
be more
wait.
localized
This is
and
the problem.
would
We're
need
getting caught
federal
in
funding.
idealism. We got to be pragmatic here. How do we pragmatically resolve the issue with our system as it is? How do we
No,
pragmatically?
you can't. The answer is you can't, right?
Yeah, no, you can't. It's called the federal government says, hey, state government, stop that.
Well, what if the
And
but they
that's
don't have
government
exactly
is
the
against-
purpose of the federal government,
the
to
federal government
intercede
is
when
against
I'm
the
not
state
disagreeing with
governments
that.
overstep their boundaries, even in localities like that. That's where you want your federal government. You don't want them up in your business all the time, but these are circumstances where it fits.
Let's
Yeah,
let's
like
be
I
clear though.
completely support the federal government intervening if it means, to stop states' overreach of power, right? I feel like I'm okay with that, right? I
Okay.
definitely support. That's why I support, Biden doing this, right? Because
Okay.
the state is the one who is overreaching their powers, and the federal government is correcting that. Now, I wish that's not always going to be the case because sometimes the state and federal agree. But when it is the case, yeah, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
I think the thing that we should point out though is that there's nothing like unconstitutional happening, right? There's a principle that's being violated. There's not like a law or anything that's being violated, right?
So do you think creating our laws around are created around principles, the principle of we
Yeah,
shouldn't
laws are
kill
created
other
around
people?
principle, but to be a nation, the ultimate authority is going to be as you raise the power, the amount of power is going to increase. So your local, we want our local politics to be empowered, but we understand that the state does have more control, and then the federal has more control than the state. We want things to happen at the lowest level. That's our principle. But we understand that because we live in like a nation that as we increase, the power level also increases. So the ability to override is there. We don't want to use that, right, unless needed. And we could say that this situation we feel like is needed, right? So that's our principle and how some people are trying to stick to it, right? I don't like it, but
well, we'll go to Doobie.
So I'm actually curious about the last part of the topic. So Wordy, you said that if the local, representatives or whatever wanted a mask mandate, and the state level government was saying no, you'd want the local decision to be respected. But what if it were the reverse? What if the local government didn't want a mandate, and the state government said, "Hey, we're going to set in place a mandate"? Would you still want the local government respected?
I would say if it basically is going to increase and likely cause the harm of people, no, I wouldn't.
So you don't actually care about the local control of anything?
No. Wait,
It's about tiers and checks and balances,
okay.
which were set up and established by our government.
I'm not existing in a binary, okay? I'm existing in a nuance. So the nuance here is I care about local control. I want to maximize local control to the extent possible. But when a local control is directly working against the interest of promoting health and welfare of people, then
what if those people don't want the mask mandate?
If they don't want the mask mandate, well, they're basically it's like, yo, if you don't want the mask mandate, suck it up, buttercup.
Okay, so you don't care about local control. So if a community says, "Hey, we don't want this mask mandate," you're going to say, "Okay, well, I know it's better for you than
so
you know it's better for you." So
whenever
the state government, the federal government's going to come in and say, "Hey, you need to have this mask mandate, and if you don't, you're not going to be able to have your schools open."
So let me ask you a question.
Send in the state troops, whatever the fuck.
Let me ask you a question. Do you acknowledge COVID is bad?
That's not the question, right?
No. Let me ask you a question. Do you acknowledge COVID's bad?
Yes, COVID's bad.
So we should have masks.
Sure, that's not what I'm asking you, right? You're the one that's
no.
I don't give it.
I'm asking
to be
you
clear,
questions to lead up to an ultimate point here.
Okay,
so
we should have masks
to prevent COVID. So if people are refusing to wear masks, how do we enforce that?
I guess
do we just let
again?
So
Wordy, no, really quickly. So Wordy, to be clear, I don't give a fuck about local control, right? I want the federal government to control this public schools, right? You do, right? You say you care about local control. You're an anarchist or whatever the fuck you are. So what I'm wondering is when the community disagrees with you and says, "Hey, Wordy, we understand you're saying this is bad, but we don't want the mask mandate. So sorry, we're not going to do it." You're saying that you tell these people, "Hey, sorry, I know it's better. I know it's best for you. You're going to do it anyway. And if you don't do it, there are consequences."
Yeah, I live on these two principles. It's called I want to not die.
It's called what's best for people and fuck what they say. That's what it is.
Doobie,
let's be honest.
Okay?
Let's be honest with that.
No. I can be real fucking honest about this, okay? There are two fucking principles that exist in my life, okay? It's called making sure people don't fucking die and making sure people can live to experience the world, okay? And then those two principles basically is the government shouldn't have the state control, but unfortunately I can't get rid of the state government as it is right now. So I have to basically say, hey, you're in charge here. Get your fucking job done because I don't want people fucking dying.
Wordy, but this is my problem that I think Doobie is pointing out is that like emergencies always exist. Like there's always threats to life. Motorcycles, cigarettes, alcohol, all that kind of shit. Like a whole bunch of freedom is predicated on risk. So basically, when you're talking about like my axiomatic principle, my fundamental principle is that I want people to be able to experience life and I want them to be able to live. Well, this is like the justification for every authoritarian regime that's ever existed ever. The Nazis just wanted good lives for Germans. The Russians just wanted good lives for Russians, and they rooted their ideology in the security of the people that they represented, and then they used that in order to assert their authority. And it was as haphazard as you, where you're saying like, "Oh, I want local control. I think local control is important. I want to maximize freedom." Oh, turns out that there's an emergency. Well, fuck that. Like, we're going to use state authority in order to enforce our will. Like that's why we live in a republic. That's why we have set rules.
The problem comes though is the same government that is basically enforcing the mask mandates. It's the same government that failed to deal with the COVID crisis. So basically, the whole process that comes here is the same group of people in power caused this issue in the first place. I'm like, you fucked up. You caused the issue. It's your fucking job to resolve the issue.
Okay,
Wait,
but
there was
wait,
no-
so one second,
there was
please.
no state that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. Okay. So wait. So let's say we're in an anarchist society, right? And there's a pandemic, right? And so it's not the same government that fucked this up. And one of these little communities says, "Hey, we don't want masks. We're not going to wear masks." We know the rest of you little communities are saying, "Hey, you should wear a mask." We're saying no. We're not going to have a mask. We're going to travel around this way.
Is everybody who doesn't want to live in that community, we'll give you options out, and you guys can be fuck off and die on your own, I guess.
Oh, you know what though?
Okay,
Here's
but
the thing. Here's the thing. What happens in that community does affect the communities surrounding it, okay? And that's why there can be intervention, because the other communities who want to wear masks, who want to be responsible, who want to follow the science are now impacted as soon as these petri dishes decide to go into their community. And that's where the problem lies. That's why that's why you have to have the state intervention. That's why you have to have the federal intervention. Because once you start crossing state lines and bringing these citizens from other states into other states where they do mandate masks, where they do mandate vaccines, where they do actually care about their
You're
citizenry.
saying this is constitutional. We all agree. Wow.
So
No.
like-
GSC,
Yeah,
the,
but-
the reason why I like Jason making this point is because like you fundamentally recreate the state in like 30 fucking seconds. And
Yeah.
there are a bunch of fucking ANCOMs in fucking chat who are like, oh, I want an anarcho-communist society. And then you're like, oh, what about all these negative externalities? And they're like, oh, well, we'll just break the rules this one fucking time. And it's like, no, you're not. You're
So,
gonna read
Wait,
Okay,
Connor,
so
Connor.
to
The
help-
problem comes though
It's
is
just-
like, right, you can never get rid of violence as a means and a tool. So what you should do is minimize like the concentration of it. So basically, if you divert it into local communities, there's less compelling force. Like the same institution that produces these COVID misinformation, produces the anti-vaxxer movement, it's the same person that is causing these issues in the first place.
No, but see,
It's that-
No,
it's
I mean
that
the
concentration
anti-vaxxer
about-
movement was
that
around long
depends-
before Trump. That's
when
silly.
they fail to educate people in vaccine information, whenever they do all these components that lead to these consequences, right? You have to break down at the sociological level. What causes anti-vaccine movements is distrust of government, the failure to enact policies, and then two, whenever they purposely fail to education. These two aspects lead to the anti-vaccine movement.
no.
I was going to try to help you, Wordy,
I
but
think
now I
that's
can't.
partially
Yeah,
true.
no,
I think
okay,
that's
hold-
partially true.
Problematic really quick. What causes fucking anti-vax movements is stupid free people who are free to share their shitty opinion on the fucking internet. So you either want a free society that is capable of being stupid, or you want a secure society in which you dictate how they live. You can't have both.
Yeah.
This is the fucking
We
balance
had a
between
secure
freedom and
society
security.
when people were dying even whenever Trump was in charge.
But
Okay,
the
here- no,
anti-vax
this is another
movement
thing.
predates Trump by fucking decades.
Okay,
Probably
but-
hundreds of
Yeah.
years.
Here's
Brady,
another
what
point.
are you saying?
There's
I-
another point. There's another point here. You were saying that it was the responsibility of the state to intervene in the fucking pandemic. To me, the pandemic is like a fucking force of nature. It's like a fucking hurricane.
So
Like,
no, but
you
the
don't
problem
control the weather.
No, the problem comes is it's a force of nature, but we can definitely set up methods to resolve the force of nature or deal with the force of nature more effectively. We cut our fucking health programs. We fucking failed to educate the populace, and we fucking did so much shit that basically everybody's like, fuck the government. And that all these issues all exacerbate into these movements. Like, it's not just things happening just randomly on its own. They are subject to material conditions. Material condition is the fucking people in power who basically sowed this shit, okay? Like, basically all these
Wordy.
consequences, all these externalities are producing these movements. They don't just happen naturally on their
Wordy.
fucking own.
Wordy, do you think freedom is important?
I say freedom, yeah, positive and negative freedom.
You understand that basically what Counterpoints was saying is that if you have a free society, there are going to be people to choose to do things that you might not choose for yourself, right?
Yeah, and if they're harming me, I say, hey, fuck off. Stop.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that like that is the fundamental part of this. There are going to be people who make decisions that are contrary to what you think is best. That's what true freedom is.
Wait,
Freedom is
But we don't
There's
let
a difference
people
between-
do things that harm each other, that harm
Yeah,
other
there's a
people.
difference
Yeah,
between
no
making
one
like-
believes.
That's
no
why
one
we
believes.
stop like drunk drivers. You can't drive
Wait.
after you've been drinking
All right,
alcohol
now
because you
you
have the
got
right to hurt other
strawman.
people.
Yeah, there's a
That's
difference
what I'm
between
at.
somebody making a decision that's contrary versus like something that's going to directly impact me. Somebody I don't know, taking heroin's not going to impact me, but if you
Yes,
fucking
it
get
could.
COVID, that
Do
is
you think?
impacting.
What is the-
Where
what
do
is
you
the-
think?
Good.
Where do you
What
think
is
we
the
should?
what is the
wait, what's
libertarian
this-
analogy? You can swing your fist so long as far as the tip of my nose, but once
Yeah.
you touch the tip
Social
of my
contract
nose,
here.
you're
You
violating
don't get me
freedom.
sick. I don't get you sick.
Okay, so Rady, would you agree with like banning or putting restrictions on the amount of fast food people can eat?
Wait,
That
hold on.
doesn't-
I'm sorry. No,
Wait,
no, no.
what?
no.
No,
Can we
I'm
go back
asking-
to what
no,
Brady
okay,
said
hold on.
before
So
that?
what
Wait,
he's
hold
trying to
on.
do is he's trying to figure out where Wordy does think local control matters, right? He was
Right.
looking for
So
instances of
so
that.
so let me
Yeah, so if-
because
I can
the
answer
reason I'm asking
If
so
it's
so
fast
just
food,
to
I
explain
don't
really
need
quickly.
to ban it. I think
Why? Wait, but these people get fat, right? They consume a lot of it. They consume too much. They get fat. They cost a lot of money in the healthcare system, which raises everybody's taxes and takes up hospital rooms for otherwise healthy people. Hurts the economy, right? So like, why should we allow these people to do that?
Oh
to
yeah.
do that?
So
If
here's
at the end
how
of the day,
easy-
this is a
people
decision
who
they're making that
consume
affects
it,
you in a
I
negative
say
way.
we should get rid of the companies that basically trying to basically drive people towards consuming fast food instead of the fucking consumers.
But-
they're the end
What?
result,
What?
not the creators of the issue. They're the end result of the issue.
No, okay,
Wait,
hold on.
wait.
Can I please address this? Can I please address this?
Pro getting
I'm
rid of
pretty-
McDonald's?
Okay, I'm pretty sure that the fucking anti-vax movement started with a bunch of rich fucking bitches in Southern California that fucking didn't want to get fucking Aiden and Kylan and fucking Jason a bunch of fucking shots because they felt like shit that they were going to make their kids cry because California is a place for like pussy ass fucking communists, right? All right, so I'm pretty sure that's where fucking anti-vax
That's not
fucking
where it
shit
started.
started.
It started.
Oh,
way
I'm
before
pretty sure
that.
that's exactly what
stupid
it
enough.
Not true at all.
There's an
Not
argument.
true.
Anyway,
Anti-vaccine sentiment has a long history in this country, a very long history that surpasses whatever happens in fucking California.
Okay, I'm blaming
Yeah, and it was
Californians.
Dr. Wakefield in Britain who's the big.
Okay.
He was the one who got it started in the 70s.
I think
The-
there is
the-
an
Can I
element
can I
of-
just
there-
point
I
out
reject
that?
that because I'm Jason and I
50%.
got vaccinated.
Okay.
Wakefield was much later than the 70s. He was,
That was 50% shit post. Just really quickly, I'll try to be quick, Doobie. The fucking point though is that you can always come up with reasons why public policy should be implemented for the people's own good. These exigent circumstances, the only reason why you care about them is because they're in your face. And a lot of the rhetoric and the motivated reasoning that you're using to like protect people from themselves and protect other people, they can be logically applied to a whole bunch of things that we take for granted within our society. So you kind of have to ask yourself, like, what's more important to you, freedom or security? And what is the balance between these two principles? Because honestly, I could extrapolate out a lot of what you said into shitloads of things that Americans currently do and create a completely different society.
The problem comes though is we can verifiably show effects. You can't verifiably show the effect of having
You can't
Jews
for
in your
drunk
country.
drivers.
No, shut the fuck up. So you can't
can't
verifiably
no,
show
you
the effect
can.
of having Jews in your country as a
Okay,
Nazi.
so
You can't verifiably show the effect of COVID, right? I like to exist in
Wait,
empirical fucking reality.
You
The
don't think
empirical
there's
reality is
empirical data that
hey,
shows that
You
drugs
can't do that and call
cause
yourself
people
an
to be more
anarchist. I'm sorry.
dangerous?
what
Wait,
the
Wordy,
fuck?
you don't think there's empirical data that shows that
Minecraft.
drugs are harmful to society?
Yeah, drugs are harmful to society, but you know why people consume drugs? Is because they're driven towards drugs.
No,
Okay,
drugs are
people
fun.
love
That's
drugs
fine.
because drugs are fun.
Hold on, wait. He's
Because
gonna
drugs
continue to
are
say
fun.
stupid shit.
Gambit.
Yeah, he's gonna continue to say stupid
Really
stuff. so we
expensive
should
one.
milk this.
Wait, I'm going to keep saying stupid shit. I can keep pointing to reasons why people actually do these things. These are real things.
I don't
that
care about
do
that. I don't.
occur. Congratulations, you don't care
that's not
about
what
shit.
No, I'm saying I don't care about the point you're trying to make. So would you be for banning drugs since drugs have been shown to increase violence and blah blah blah? Would you
And
be for
alcohol, by the
banning-
way.
I would be in
Yeah.
favor of limiting the consequences because the consequences are what caused these issues in the first place. Basically,
No,
it says
No, but
How
regardless
they'll
of
put people
what
in the
causes-
conditions where they don't feel the need to self-medicate.
No,
Yeah,
people are gonna
exactly.
do drugs regardless in a free
yeah,
society.
people are going to do drugs, but you know
I
what?
Regardless.
smoke weed every day.
No, people
And
are going to
that
do.
person-
Wait,
person can
Jesus,
get drunk and run in
stop. Okay, people
just
are
saying a
going
bunch
to
of
consume
stupid
drugs,
shit.
but but you know why people are driven towards drugs? Is because there's no other fucking way they can make money to do it, right?
Listen,
Drugs
No, some
perpetuate
people just like
through the
drugs.
fucking
listen, you're not. Some
war on
people just
drugs
like
happen,
drugs.
dude.
Some people like
are
to
you
get high. Some people like to get drunk, then they get in their car and they crash into you. Like, why would you make alcohol legal?
Connor, I hate
Okay,
you.
so I will say there is.
Well,
No,
that's why
this
you
is
can't
just the
drive drunk.
reality.
There's
We
a
we
difference
Alcohol's
between
not
what he's
illegal.
saying.
You just
No,
can't
no,
drive
hold on,
drunk.
hold on. In
And
what he's
just let me say
No,
one
no,
more
in-
sentence. And I'm
okay.
going to hand it over to you. No, so we've understood that there are things that can have negative consequences in our society, but because we think freedom is paramount, we allow these things to exist. That's the real answer. Regardless of how you affect material conditions, there will be people who like drugs, there will be people who do drugs, there will be people who do terrible things on drugs. But we accept in our society, we value freedom. So there are things like alcohol, because the government knows how to tax it, blah, 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 that we allow to be legal and we allow to infiltrate our society.
But
Have you
But
heard
we
of the
do
thing
think
of
it's
Do you
have
know
you heard
why?
of
Because the
positive and
alternative,
negative freedom?
criminalizing it, is worse than legalizing it. That's the problem.
But
And we've
we do-
already seen that.
Yes,
We've
but
already seen
in
what
Gambit's
happens
case,
when you do
it
that.
would still be a problem even if it was legalized, right? Alcohol still has negative effects even though it's legalized. So his point is
Yeah.
that yes, a lot of it might come from the prohibition, but there are some negative effects that we tolerate because we value freedom.
Yeah, but we do
Exactly.
think
Yes,
Sure.
things to punish people who are actually engaging in the action that has negative offenses on directly on people. That's why you can't drive drunk or high, or you can't go fucking operate a backhoe with after smoking a fucking blunt on lunch.
Which
Like
is fucked up, but yeah, I get it.
we limit
It sounds
what
like a lot
people
of fun,
can
though.
do to actually prevent some of the negative consequences. So that's why like fuck, if we're talking about COVID specifically, we're not requiring people to get vaccines. We're just saying you can't engage in polite society if you don't, because that's the action that leads to harm. You going out and going to movie theaters and stuff like that is the action that's causing harm.
Okay, but the issue is that, correct me if I'm wrong, but Wordy, I think what you said earlier is that so long as they're not impacting you or the community, you're not going to ban these things or whatever, or you're gonna prioritize their freedom. But when you look at something like alcohol, right? Because this is illegal, we have a lot of really good statistics on the outcomes, right? And what this does in our society. And for things like domestic violence, sexual assault, murder, fights, right? If you look at those like crimes in our country, each one of those almost, I think, like some of them like over 50%, the others like near 50% of those crimes in this country happen under the influence of alcohol. Right.
Okay.
So if it's something that you care about, you care about making sure that people are free to live their lives without worrying about this, about getting beaten up or raped or whatever, right? Then why wouldn't you want to ban alcohol?
Well, it's because the alcohol is a confounding factor, but it ultimately is determined by other variables, right? Domestic violence is a lot of part of what we call rape culture. Men feel some kind of empowerment over women. They feel like they can get away with a lot more shit than if a woman was to do it. And that's a reality. And then basically that shit happens, and then alcohol confounds the factor. The alcohol doesn't cause it. It instead is this lack of responsibility, accountability, and all these other factors that influence this behavior. So
It's the
basically,
lack-
every
It's
other
the lack
factor,
of inhibition.
these other factors that apply, you can't just ignore them. You have to basically determine what factors are more overriding and would cause the most series of behaviors. Alcohol causes plenty of issues, but these other factors are more relevant and more important.
Wordy, okay, but this is the one thing that I'm hearing over and over again that I just fundamentally disagree with. You kind of keep saying like, oh, well, it's like the material conditions, or it's the corporations, or it's this, that, or the other. But I think they have a whole bunch of drives. The reason why people do drugs is because they're fucking fun and being high feels good, right? The reason why people eat fast food is because it's filled with fat and sugar, and we, as fucking evolved creatures, think that fat and sugar is high calorie, and since it's high calorie, we've evolved to have taste buds for it. We like to have aggressive and weird sex because sex is probably tied to procreation. So even if you're not making kids, you have a biological incentive to engage in sexual behaviors, even if it doesn't actually result in kids. So the thing that I keep hearing is like kind of passing the buck over and over again to like institutions and like social factors and like all this kind of stuff. Whereas at the end of the day, I especially from a conservative perspective, I just think people are fucked up some of the time.
Okay.
And that's where, but just final point, this is where anarchism to me is kind of like a fucking meme, because I think you need the state to bully people into some level of like moderate and normal fucking behavior. And without that fucking threat of implied violence and social pressure, people are fucking degenerate goddamn animals.
So, okay, so the problem comes
we're gonna wrap it up with this, and we're gonna move on to like the rest of the question, because I don't want to just be on anarchism.
Okay, so the problem comes though, right, is when we look at what institutions, what things influence the most, right? When you have an entire overarching government body that determines laws and all these different factors, right? For a long time, women didn't have control over their lives. And you know what that was reinforced by? The state. It created those conditions for these realities, right? We talk about systemic racism. People aren't naturally racist on their own, but when you have an institution that reinforces racism, you know what happens? I'm looking at the more greater influence. People are a little fucked up. I will admit that. But people are driven to be more fucked up with overarching institutions that basically either does not check their behavior or is like basically let these behaviors consistently occur to where it eventually develops into the culture itself. And so basically, like, it's the whole chicken and
debate. I found our next debate topic.
It's the whole chicken and the egg argument. What comes first? What has more effect? For me, overarching powerful institutions create the chicken, and then the chicken bursts the egg, and it's reinforced by a circular cycle. That's basically the whole problem.
Okay.
What starts first?
Got it. Great. All right. So I want to get back to, assuming that we will have a state, because we're going to have a state, with the powers that it uses. Is it right that the federal government is stepping in this particular case?
So Prime,
Yep.
if Trump would have did what you said in the question, the media would have demonized him. I think maybe we should
100%.
all agree with that.
Hell yeah.
Yep.
If he
would
was
not be-
giving
I won't deny
support
that.
to
You're right about
anti-mask
that.
people, then that would be fucking horrendous.
Yeah, and the reality is that some people here would have demonized him. I would say, oh god, the federal government coming in and taking away local, local freedoms and shit like that. Right, but suddenly it doesn't matter because you agree.
Well,
Yeah,
that
well,
would have never been
because
my
that's-
argument. My
hold on,
argument
Dewey,
would have
but
been the
that's-
federal
Actually, I
government
would
coming
have.
in and
I would have
superseding
patted Trump
my
on the back if he came in for this shit, and he did what was right. I would have patted him on the back and
But
said,
we're
"Great
talking
job,
about
you
the
did
opposite.
one
No,
thing
no.
good."
Yeah,
for
the
Trump
opposite.
was
president."
doing reverse.
No.
Jason,
Trump was
yeah,
doing
we're
the
saying
reverse.
opposite.
Truly false.
Jason, if he had said, "Hey, keep anti-mask mandates," that's what he was. That's what he would.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm saying if he decided to say, "Yeah, mask mandates for everybody," you know, you got to understand though, he would have
not
gotten
the
shit for
question.
saying that.
It's not the
That way,
question.
That's
too.
not the question.
Yeah. It's not the question.
The question was if at the lower level they wanted to have masks and Trump said, "Hey, well, I'm not going to give you funding unless you don't wear masks." That's the question that we got sent.
Which is
and
actually
I would have. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
No, false. Go ahead. You haven't speak up.
Okay. Yeah, no, I would still be I would be against Trump doing that, but that's because I wouldn't be making the argument that he's superseding like local authority. It would be that he's literally just doing something idiotic. So the only reason why we talk so much about like, well, they're doing this local level authority and stuff like that is because that's the talking point, is that, well, now the federal government's stepping over state boundaries. It's like, well, I don't really care. The federal government's doing what it should be. My argument is never about is not about local authority. It's the government is doing its role.
Yeah, so for me as a whole, it's basically is I have a few set principles. I like people being alive, and I want people to have as much happiness as possible. And if an institution has control over people's lives and they're failing to fulfill its job, then I'm like, yo, you got to fulfill your job. You want me to accept your power? Fucking fulfill your job. And that's the whole process. Is each principle I have, I would like to adhere to as much as possible. But there are instances where I'm okay with violating principles in order to come to a better outcome.
So,
I think everybody agrees with that. We all have principles. Nothing. You've said it, Connor, yourself. You don't believe in democracy to the full extent. You think if we can adhere to democracy, and this is the same instance, we should try adhere to autonomy. And as much control as you want as on a local level, as much as you can, until you start doing some real stupid shit.
Yeah, I think it's fair to have prima facie principles, principles that you generally follow, but there are exceptions. I mean, to be fair to Wordy, I do think that there is a huge difference because of how contagious the coronavirus is. I don't think he's really violating his principles that much, or his principles of local autonomy. But clearly, I don't think local autonomy is the issue here. I think I'm probably, and with the exception of Wordy, probably the only people who really care about the local autonomy. So I think we should just move on to talking about, the whether or not the mask mandates, are good or bad.
Yeah, I said it at the beginning of this that I didn't think that this was an issue necessarily of states' rights versus the federal government or anything like that. I think that's just a false dichotomy. Like that's framing the question and the whole thing in the wrong way to look at it. Because again, like we're talking about a pandemic, and we're talking about vaccines and masks, two things proven to help during a pandemic. So it's like this is not the same thing as like whatever you want to bring up. It's really not
School
like
choice or whatever.
it's
whatever
just
you wanna
not.
call it,
And like
like
we're talking about adding a vaccine to a list of vaccines that people are already getting. You know what I'm talking about? And to go to Jason's point that he made earlier, we're talking about a vaccine with a lot of research, at least the development behind it. Like the mRNA vaccine has been researched for years now, as he pointed out. So like, this is, I think that the politicizing of this shows like people's true colors. Not anybody here, of course.
Wait,
Well,
hold on.
I think it is a
Everybody
political
here-
question, though.
Not anybody here. I already said that.
It's a political question if you want to add it to the list of mandatory vaccines, right? But question. I think everyone here supports mask mandates, right? Is anybody here against mask mandates?
I
It
think
depends.
I was about to say, I think private and public institutions should be making decisions for what they want to implement, and then basically the community that they serve should basically reinforce or criticize that decision.
But to be clear, I'm not asking for a random local municipality's opinion. I'm asking for y'all's on this panel, right? So if you were in authority and you could either implement mask mandates or not, I'm asking who here would say, I don't want to implement mask mandates, and why? It's just only because
probably
I've
wouldn't.
never heard somebody argue that like in an effective way in any means. It's always like masks kill people and they like bring back in the CO2 and they die. Like it's wild shit, right? So I just want to hear like an actual argument.
Yeah, I probably would not. I would want, I would definitely encourage people to wear masks because the science, clearly shows masks and vaccines work with almost no side effects. However, I do believe that private institutions should be able to have mask mandates, but I don't think it's up for the government to decide which institutions do that, right? So I don't think there needs to be mask mandates, but considering most spaces are private, I think it's okay and should be encouraged for them to have mask mandates. So like, if Safeway wants to have a mask mandate, I think that's their prerogative. But I don't think if Safeway doesn't want to have a mask mandate, well, then you just shouldn't go to Safeway then.
What about the federal government in terms of its employees? Like, can the federal government give a mask mandate to its employees at least?
Fuck yeah!
Well, I'm asking problematic Pan. He's being very problematic right now. I think all the rest of us are in agreement on this.
I mean,
Pan, let me ask you this real pointed, okay? So we have the science that.
Wait, he never answered my question though.
Yeah, wait, sorry. Can you repeat your
I
question?
don't care
Sorry,
about
Captain
the
Agents. I care. Should they be allowed to require their own
federal
employees?
Should the federal government, as an employer?
I think so. I mean, I would prefer the federal government had less employees that they can mandate it to, but yeah, I think that. Sure.
Federal government's the biggest employer in the country.
Listen, I did way more fucked up shit for the federal government than put a fucking cloth on my fucking face. Sorry.
They
definitely told me I didn't have a choice. They did not make that shit optional.
If you're in the military, they have every fucking right to mandate mass fucking vaccines. If they want you to take fucking toxic waste and you're in the military, I think they have pretty much full control.
Pan, I have to ask you one question. So say like this, okay? So we have the science, right? Say a local community doesn't want to implement masks and people there are getting more sick and they're actively dying. And then you just like, nope. And then the people in that community are like, yo, we're fucking dying. And the local government doesn't implement it. Then you're like, what the fuck do we do? Do we just let them fucking die?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, eventually, you know,
Yeah.
the people who die would be the ones without the mask, right? So the problem will solve itself.
Wait. Even
I'm kidding, but I like.
Bro,
And
I'm not. I will bite this bullet. Fucking
Yeah.
yes.
It's true.
Everybody
Like-
should, but
Like
Yes.
do you want a perfectly secure society, or do you want a society in which there's balance of power and people can exercise their freedom even in stupid ways? Probably 10,000 fucking assholes a year break their goddamn backs on fucking dirt bikes. I'm not going to be trying to ban fucking dirt bikes anytime soon. That
but,
people
but,
engage
but
in
how does the
stupid
dirt bike hurt?
injurious behavior.
How does the dirt bike hurt other people?
I
Like,
think
Drugs.
what direct
drugs,
Oh, you
consequences?
can hurt
have?
other
can do
people with
things
dirt
with
bikes.
drugs.
It
It's that
raises
hurts
the-
other
It's
people
happened.
like drugs. We'll just parry to a different one. Like, just,
Yeah.
you
No,
understand
no,
the
you can use
concept.
dirt bikes,
I
right?
understand.
Hold on.
Like,
Wait, hold on. So any like injury like that raises the cost of healthcare for everybody else because of the way that health insurance works in this
he's
country.
not gonna
Well, only if
understand
you're
that. Though.
sick.
No.
He's
What do you
not
not
gonna
gonna
Yes.
understand
That's
that?
true.
No, wait. All right,
Yes.
we know that. Like, where we went over this before. Like, oh my God, you're like doing this to the conversation every time. We know there are freedoms that we afford to people that can negatively impact others. We can parry to drugs. We can parry to a whole bunch of other shit. But
Guns.
there are things that have guns. There are things that have negative consequences. So every time we get to this conversation, don't say, "Oh, blah blah blah." Like, you understand the like spirit of what the concept is.
But do you agree that we should try to minimize the consequences at least?
Yeah,
So
well,
Not
but
always.
I
Not
don't think
always.
I think there's a little bit of a false dichotomy. If you're in this situation where they're not mandating masks and you're really concerned about coronavirus because you're not an idiot, there are things that you can do to make sure that you don't get it. You can you can double mask, you can get one of those fucking fancy masks, you can make sure to get vaccinated yourself. You can do a lot of things. If the community, now this isn't ideal. Obviously, the ideal situation is everyone not be a fucking idiot and get vaccinated and wear a mask. But there are things that you can do. It's not just you're forced to die if other people
Okay,
around you
so
aren't
but
getting
let me
it.
ask you. Okay, so we've done that, right? And then these people refuse to get masked, and then you know what happens? They keep the fucking coronavirus around, and I'm still fucked to stay in my house more. I'm still fucked to wear a mask all the time, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah, I'm
this is
just about it
just-
too. I don't like it either.
Like basically, you're just like
I have a lot of contempt for people who won't get vaccinated or wear
I
a
don't.
mask.
I just the frustration for me that
Well, you
comes
do
more
not
than
wanna
anything.
I agree.
You just
keep
you're
coming
just
up.
you're just letting
contempt, but
people
not
like
mandate.
you're just like
But,
saying
okay.
ah
I think
fuck
you
it.
should bully them into fucking oblivion. That's
we
my
keep bringing
solution.
up we
So
keep bringing up like
I feel like
alternative
I feel like
examples and
there's a line here though. Okay, like here's my thing. If you're in a space where people have the choice to get vaccinated and have the ability to get vaccinated, and they do so and others choose not to, then you could make the argument, okay, well, fend for yourself, dude. You know what? I can get vaccinated, you can't, or choosing not to, and that's going to be what it is. I'm going to be safe, you're not. But here's where the problem comes in. When you go to like convalescent living, when you go to nursing homes, when you go to elementary schools, there needs to be mandates because these kids cannot be vaccinated. They don't have a choice in the matter. They're completely vulnerable. They're a mass population. 1 in 4 COVID victims right now is a child under the age of 12. No, there is
that actually true?
absolutely a reason to
No,
mandate.
that's not true. There's no way that's true. That's all.
Okay, but
That's
The
I-
amount of children under
So,
12.
wait,
yes.
Jason, can you send the reference for the nonsense that you just said?
Okay, but even if we
Are you talking about
bite
cases or
down-
death?
So Connor and then
Cases.
false.
cases.
Oh,
Oh,
cases. Oh,
okay.
yeah,
even
yeah.
even
yeah.
okay, but even if we bite, let's just say that we fucking bite the bullet on the cases. Let's say there's negative secondary health effects, all that kind of shit or whatever. This is where I think it's up to public and private institutions to decide what they're going to do. We live in a fucking free society. We know what fucking works. Institutions are accountable to the people at the local fucking level. If you have a local fucking school board that's not fucking implementing masks and not implementing fucking vaccines, then you can fucking pull your kid out and do fucking virtual learning. There are options in order to accommodate fucking everybody. And if a school board makes the inverse decision where they say, yes, absolutely, every fucking employee needs to be vaccinated and every fucking kid needs to wear a mask, and then a student is like, hey, I don't want to get vaccinated and I don't want to wear a fucking mask, then guess what, bitch? You're on fucking virtual learning. Get your fucking ass home. And that's the thing, is there's choices in the ability to exercise power. I think the reason why GSU and I keep getting fucking frustrated about this shit is because like you have to fucking choose and balance two principles: freedom, security. If you want perfect security, then you want zero freedom. If you want 100% freedom, then you're going to have dog shit fucking security. These things are not necessarily like completely conflicting principles, but they are at odds a decent chunk of the time. And we live in a free society. Go ahead, buddy.
You keep going this 100% freedom route, the freedom to fucking kill other people with your fucking COVID.
Let's go to false. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just have to ask, because you guys have brought up like drugs and stuff like that as other examples. What do you guys think about already having the already mandatory vaccines we have for public school? Do you think we should get rid of that, or
why would we get rid of it?
Aren't you limiting your freedom to be able to go to school by having to have vaccines? Like how is
the school decided to have that as a condition of attendance?
No, the state did.
Okay, well, good.
Well, I guess I can ask. I think I can maybe ask the same question in a more pointed way, maybe, because most Americans go to public schools. I think most or all private schools have like these same vaccines as a requirement for admission to, if I remember correctly. I actually looked this up a long time ago. But so in effect, what's happening, right, is that being an American, right, living functionally without any hindrance, going to our public schools, using our institutions in the United States, comes with the requirement that you get injected with a bunch of shit at some point, right? And are we okay with that? I'm personally okay with that. I don't give a fuck, right? But and I think most of you here would be okay with that. But I think we have to be honest about what that is, right? It's saying that to exist in this country, you need to get injected with some shit, right? Just like the Obama thing, the healthcare mandate is, hey, to exist in this country as an adult and not get penalized, you need to have health insurance, right? Like, yeah, I think some things, like people like talk about freedom as if it's like, like this fucking divine right or some shit. I think sometimes it's okay to restrict freedoms for the greater good, and I think that's what that is.
Well, but Doobie, I don't think we would, or at least I wouldn't disagree with you. I think a private or a public institution has the right to mandate the standards that they need in order for people to gain admittance. So, for instance, I'm on standby. I'm waiting for them to fucking get green light COVID vaccines for my kid so I can get him fucking vaccinated. I can't fucking wait. I'm so excited to fucking inject him with experimental chemicals. But what I'm saying is that there's dumb fucks out there. And I think it sets a really nasty precedent when you say the government says, for the greater good, you have to inject chemicals in your fucking body. And even if you take alternative accommodations to not participate in public society, you have to do this thing. Fuck that. Like basically what I would say is the private and public institutions of society can make determinations on who they're going to let into their institutions. And then it's up to those people on whether or not they want to fucking do it. I think it's weird as shit to insist on principle that for the greater fucking good, the government gets to inject you with whatever the fuck it says is necessary. That's a really
they're
weird
not even
fucking thing to
injecting
say.
I actually concur with you on that, Counterpoints. I think that's a great point. I think if you're talking about like people where they're not in situations with a lot of other vulnerable people and they're choosing to seclude themselves from society, they don't want to be a part of the public. I know people who have Guillain-Barré's syndrome, I think that's what it's called, and they can't get vaccinated, and they are seriously staying home, not only because they can't get vaccinated and don't want to take the risk of getting it and infecting somebody else, but because they're scared as hell about getting it.
Okay, so I do want to say one thing. If a group of people say, hey, we don't want to interact in society, we're never going to go out and shit, like, I would say as long as you're not harming people outside of your small little group, sure, like the fucking Amish, right? They're not harming other people. They're doing their own thing. But the problem comes though, is these people who are demanding these lack of mask mandates, not having these mandatory vaccines, are the same people that says, I get to do what I want. And then they basically say they don't want any consequences. And it's like, it's the frustration for me is like they want freedom, but they want freedom from consequences. And like,
oh man. Yeah. 100%. We agree.
And that's the frustration for me, is you're basically asserting is like the consequences applying to other people don't fucking matter. And enough of this whataboutism about drugs here. It's like vaccines, good. And then people are like, well, more freedoms. And they're like, fuck the consequences, when their consequences are killing thousands of other people. How do we resolve that issue?
Well, these other people don't view vaccines as good, though. That's the main problem. They
Congratulations,
think
they're
that the government's trying
stupid. Who
yeah,
cares?
I'm aware, but
Yes.
yes, they're fucking morons. But look at it from their perspective. From their perspective, they think the government's trying to inject them with like fucking heroin or some shit, right? So how like
See, I would be
that's the
fine with
problem.
I'd be fine with their critiques if it was actually like, you know, like good. Like I would say like, oh, the government's having a lot of these issues. Like, oh, you know, like government forces you to do this or that, and you can make these critiques. But when you basically critique it just to be stupid instead of like actually providing meaningful critiques to resolve the issue, then you're like, what the fuck? Like the whole like the fucking like I know you know Connor, like the fucking left comms, like basically who are like crazier than me, basically like, fuck this shit. You're like, fuck the government, and they're like, mal freedoms, and then they're like, oh, yo, like I don't know, whatever this and that. I'm like, I understand the sentiment, but you're leveraging the critiques in a wrong way.
Right, but but again, I just want to make sure that like the audience understands what I'm saying and hopefully what GSU is saying. Like schools, federal institutions, and a whole bunch of people should decide what they're going to mandate from their employees and the people who enter their businesses. Citizens should decide on a voluntary basis what industries they're going to be able to participate in. Let's say Cracker Barrel says no masks, no vaccines, we don't give a fuck, you do whatever the fuck you want. And then a bunch of fucking Cracker Barrel employees and a bunch of Cracker Barrel fucking restaurant goers or whatever, they all get sick and they all get fucking COVID and they fucking die or whatever. That like ultimately, if the rest of the fucking people are making choices that are responsible and intelligent, then I do not want the federal government to be able to say, you have to take this fucking chemical and inject it in your fucking body. I don't want to set that precedent. I don't want that to be legal precedent. I don't want to give them that authority because I think it can be used for nefarious ends. And if you look at the fucking history of the United States even, let alone other fucking countries, then that level of authority has been abused in the past.
What about driving? You have to follow the speed limit, right? You have to follow the limit. Oh, I have the freedom to drive. I have the freedom to go whatever speed I want.
You don't
But
have
like,
to follow.
no,
that's fucking communism.
You just got to make sure the police not
entire
around.
speedometer. I'm going to use the entire speedometer.
But the problem comes is you drive a vehicle and then you're like, oh, I have the freedom to drive, right? I can drive. I have the ability to drive. And then from there, you're like, oh, I'm going to drive as fast as I want. I'm going to do whatever I want on the road. You would think, no, like that's going to kill people.
But isn't that already illegal? Though?
Like, can I ask you a question?
So like basically you're basically
can we not lose this analogy though? Because we have licensing, we have age requirements, we have safety measures, we have basically we ban aggressive drivers from racing or from doing other kind of shit. We have all sorts of regulations. We control where people go using the highway.
Driving is a privilege, not a
you're
right.
basically accepting all of these things right here, but you're not accepting this. And I don't understand the analysis. Where is the analysis stopping? Where is it starting?
Because you can get by in American society, but it's going to be very difficult without a car. The same way that you could get by without being vaccinated, but you're not going to be able to participate in a lot of private and public institutions because most people aren't dumb fucks, or at least a third of people aren't dumb fucks, and they're pressuring another third of people who are dumb fucks.
Vaccine mandates?
No, I want to reach some people. Listen. If you don't want to have to worry about vaccine mandates, then just become a software engineer. You can work from home like I do. You don't have to worry about any of this.
So I guess I want to make sure we're on the same point because Connor said something earlier. I don't think anyone here, and I don't think anyone here, and I don't think anyone major. I know everyone advocates for every policy in politics, but I don't think anyone's actually advocating for like mandating that you get the vaccine. It's you get the vaccine or your life is going to become a lot more difficult. That is the choice.
Okay,
so you get the vaccine or you
so-
can't go to the movie theaters or something
Okay,
like that.
so I think
You get the
I've unfairly
vaccine or you
misrepresented
can't go to
myself.
sports games. It's not that we are literally sending the alphabet soup goon squad to knock on your door with vaccination needles. No one's saying that.
Okay, so
I'd be for that.
Okay, so basically my personal perspective, and I think I was saying this wrong because I think you were basically saying no vaccines at all or whatever. Basically, I was like, I was of the position that if you want to participate in society, you should do this. I feel like we were agreeing. I feel like we were just misunderstanding each other.
Yeah,
Like,
and
Everyone
No,
should
I
be
don't think
forced
we're.
to freebase the vaccine.
DB.
I mean,
Yeah,
if it's
I
more
think you're
effective.
debating what you think, like, because there are a lot of anti-vaxxers out there who do think like that, but I don't think anyone in here is like that. The people in
Okay.
here that are against
I
mandates
don't
agree
know.
that there are consequences.
I was interpreting some stuff and I was really stun locked for a
Okay,
second.
DB. Yeah.
Well, I was just saying, I don't think that we were misinterpreting each other. I think that we were flabbergasted by the flimsiness of your ideology. And that's what we were kind of like harping on for a long time.
True,
I mean,
left
do you,
libertarianism.
I just want to make sure. I want to make sure that I heard you correctly earlier. Right. So when I brought up fast food and how people eating a lot of fast food negatively impacts the economy and society, all this stuff, you said that we should ban McDonald's. We should go after McDonald's and take them down.
Yes.
So we should ban McDonald's because people like Big Macs? Like I don't know.
Well, the problem
that's really fucking weird. Like I don't know how
played a
you
trap card and you just fucking fell right into that shit.
Oh,
Holy
I'll
fuck.
fucking bite this
It's
bullet
fucking
every day,
awful.
motherfucker.
Okay, yeah, explain it to me.
McDonald's
Okay,
holds
alright,
a lot of
Christ.
influence. It has the ability to lobby for its own policies. And you know what?
Listen.
American people don't really have the ability to influence that.
Listen, we
people like
talked about
hamburgers. You're gonna
drugs.
ban a company because
No,
people like purchasing their food? Like what the fuck?
Wait, this guy said, "Yo, the drug problem. Yo, let's just fix material conditions as if it's like possible to completely fix it." Like he's just gonna say stuff. Y'all gotta understand that. Like he's coming from a ideologue perspective. He doesn't
Yeah, I'm
have
coming from an
original
ideological
ideas.
perspective
He
that I
just
feel
said-
like people being compelled or being driven to decisions
Well, they
that
did
are
a study in-
negative,
they did a study
negative
in rats.
externalities to them.
They did
It's
a
not
study
even
in
consistent.
rats where the rats were given cocaine through their bottle feeder, right? And the rats, as soon as they got cocaine, would keep going back and going back as long as the cage had nothing else in it. As soon as they gave them a huge environment in which they could go enjoy playing in the environment and doing different things in the environment,
They did cocaine
they
and then
stopped
went
So
going
you
back
think if
for the
we reduce-
cocaine.
if
And
we
that
reduce
just
that's
shows
not
that
true.
there is
freedom
there
of
is
humans
ties
to be
to that.
in the cage, then yes, but
Yeah,
we
Jason,
Ties,
that-
there are
we need
ties
to
to
do
a
that.
better way of living through better material conditions and better circumstances. Does that guarantee that people aren't going to do drugs? Hell no, it's not, because people like to have fun.
People
But
aren't rats
the
either.
people who get addicted to it, who are having serious trouble with it, who usually result in the violence and the things that you talk about, the crime and all that, the desperation, they don't get that far because they
Those are the
have
only
material
Welcome to the
needs.
Skinner box, motherfuckers.
That's
We're
a-
all birds in a
That's
cage.
such a
I'm not sure
like,
people and
low
rats are
resolution view.
necessarily
GSU,
comparable,
you
but,
and
like,
I
in
are
that
literally
respect?
birds in a cage. We're despite all our raids, we are still just a rat in a cage.
Because,
Okay?
like, I'm just saying, if you put me in a fun new environment with cocaine,
I'm gonna do cocaine first.
I'm gonna do
right?
the cocaine and then go have fun.
Yes.
And then I'm
Wait,
gonna go back
that's
to
gonna be
cocaine
You're
for
going to
15
do the
minutes, okay?
cocaine, but
That's
you're
what-
going to do
that's
it
what
less.
corrupted-ass
You're going to
humans-
do the cocaine less, though.
Yes, but you're still going to do cocaine, which
Yes.
makes it have
What-
negative
basically,
externalities.
Why would I
basically-
do it less?
Basically, how it's like this. It's
Well,
like
I
this.
got
Okay?
zero sense. Have you ever
Okay.
done
It's-
cocaine?
It's
Yeah,
like
I'm
this. Okay.
sorry.
It's
Now-
like this.
Cocaine is
okay,
overrated as
okay,
fuck
bad
now.
analogy,
It's
although the
okay,
study's
right?
legit.
No,
It's
well,
like-
Jason, so you're actually wrong. They still did cocaine in the study, just not enough to kill themselves.
Okay. So
And the
basically,
first time they
okay.
killed themselves doing cocaine. The
bridge
second
the
time
gap-
they
There you
just did
go.
cocaine for
There
fun.
you
Bridge the
go.
gap,
Instead,
Connor.
they did
Bridge
the
the gap,
cocaine to
okay?
enjoy themselves, not
Okay.
because they were
Bridging the gap.
miserable and killing
Bridging-
themselves with it.
bridging the
That
gap.
still
Okay,
validates my
okay.
points.
I've
Right,
done
but that,
cocaine
the
many
point is
times. I've never
material
killed
conditions
myself.
alone wouldn't get rid of it, right?
Okay.
It wouldn't get rid of it, but it would resolve the issue of desperation and
here-
addiction that you see out of people who are
No.
in desperation and desperate
All right.
situations.
That's not
To
true.
bridge the gap, right? I'm with you that people should, to some degree, have freedom to pursue stupid shit. Okay, I'm with you 100%. However, basically, when you look at the freedom to pursue these, and then you think about all these other overriding institutions that basically say, yo, fuck your freedoms, we're going to drive you to do these stupid shits. And that's the problem is, right? People are driven to maximize these behaviors as kind of like a remedy of the fucking shit in their life.
Would you ban advertising?
I don't know. I haven't thought about it.
You don't know if you ban advertising?
Yeah, I don't have a position about it because I haven't thought about it.
Okay. So someone
Basically-
has a product, you might be okay, and they want to show this product to people because
Yeah, like if they want it, maybe if they want to
you
show off
might
the
be
product,
okay.
maybe I'm okay with
you
it.
say
You
that,
might be
no,
okay with them doing
The product
this.
is socialism and they're pushing it on everybody. I'm totally okay with it.
Wait,
But-
Doobie, you're not using the key word. You got to say abolish, and then he's just going to say yes. No
okay.
matter what you say next. Yes,
Hey,
let's do
GSU,
it.
shut the fuck up. Okay. Basically, what I'm saying is
if people aren't like being influenced by the society and they're like, that seems all right. And then from there, like, okay. And then if they want to,
but advertising influences people. Like, what do you
Advertising
mean?
is terrible.
Like fucking jingles and
basically,
commercials to get
maybe
stuck
we
in
could
people's
talk.
head.
We could
and,
talk
like,
about reducing the amount of influence advertisement has on it. But
You
I think
can't reduce
if
that.
you'd sub jingles.
you can,
Would you
you
sub
can
jingles? I get stuck in
absolutely.
people's
You can
head and just
reduce
have
the
them
amount of
repeating this fucking
lobbying
thing over and over.
influences. You can kind of like
No,
maybe increase the amount like the FCC has on the fucking advertising.
God, and you guys thought I was a fascist. Holy shit.
the
Oh,
research
shut the
that
fuck
they
up,
do with
Doogie, okay?
advertising and
You
how
literally
they
want to
There's
get
that,
a load of brown people, okay?
Wait, I'm brown. Okay, I
There's
love
that
Mexicans so
horseshoe-
much. I want them to become
horseshoe
Americans.
perspective
Okay,
going on
that's
right
how
now.
much I love them.
I mean, yeah. That is
Look
that's
at
pretty,
Prime.
that's
Look
pretty
at
good
Prime.
emotion.
making Prime happy. Look at Prime's face, y'all.
Yeah,
It's
like
not making-
he was tired before he started the stream. All right,
Tribe tried to re-rail this conversation, and we have successfully yet again derailed it into why
It's
anarchism
Wordy's
sucks,
fault.
which
Really.
we all
We made
agree
it.
with. I think
This is
we
your
all
brain on
agree.
ideology. This is what happens. You shouldn't.
Oh,
do
wait,
it.
this is your brain on ideology. One
Not
of
even
them.
once.
Colonial
Not even
regime.
once.
Shut up.
Oh my God, Wordy,
So
please.
to answer
you've
the
been talking for
question,
so
though,
long. You're
if
so
Trump were
wordy.
to invoke an anti-mask policy at the federal level, and people were dying as a result, I think that our states and our local governments would stand up to that, and I think they'd be right to do so. There's a point at which we have to say there is context in the way in which we view our government and we view our political systems. We have to deal within the context of what is here and now. And we are in a system in which there are checks and balances in place that afford us the ability to use the federal government to put checks in place when necessary, to use the state and local governments to put checks in place when necessary. So that being said, we are going to exercise use of our government as it exists now because we don't have a choice. It's what we are presented with here and now in the present. We can talk rhetorically about what may be someday somewhere, but as it stands right now, if Donald Trump were to say anti-mask or I'm banning mask mandates across the country and whatever, I'd say, you know what? This is time. As we watch our citizens die, our fellow brothers and sisters die, this is a time where we stand up and say, you know what? Our federal government's wrong on this. And that's called balance of power.
Okay,
and
that
that's
was beautiful.
exactly what our government is founded on.
That was beautiful. I just want to give Wordy a little word of advice that you're falling directly in to Doobie's trap. He keeps bringing up anarchism and what you would do in your ideology. But what you need to just say, and you could have just shut this shit down immediately, is that's not what we're doing here, though. Like, we're talking about vaccine mandates in America, you know, what Joe Biden is doing now. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about my fucking anarcho.
Yeah, that's on me.
fantasy.
It's like I get agitated, and then somebody says
I
something,
know.
and I feel the need to respond.
No,
That's
I
on
get
me.
it. I get it. I'm observing this, and now I'm giving you public, hopefully
Trust me,
constructive
that's something my
criticism.
brother employs on me
Wait, let me
regularly.
ask you a question though. So, Wordy, if Trump was
Don't do it, Wordy.
I'm
Don't
just
fall
saying,
into
if
it, Wordy.
Trump-
He's playing a
if
trap
Trump-
card.
If Trump was like mandating that people couldn't wear masks, would you just abolish the government or?
I mean, I want to abolish the state. So like,
God damn it, Wordy!
We're doing it again.
Why, dude?
You walked right
what's
into that
actually
issue.
happening?
You walked
What's
right
actually
into
happening?
that.
Okay, no, what's actually happening? What's actually happening is this is what
You just
happens
asked
when
an
a
anarchist,
when a
though.
level 1 anarchist meets a level 99 authoritarian. Okay, it's gonna happen every single time. It's always gonna end up back at me.
well,
Wordy, I'm glad to have you on my side.
Doobie, shut the fuck up, okay? Basically, what it comes down to is Trump saying anti-mask is bad. So basically, like, yo, Trump, stop. Like, you basically keep pressuring them, say, hey, fucking change your tone. And that's what happened, right? He was initially kind of against the mask, and then he softened his tone. So, like, this is literally what literally happened.
So
We literally-
I have that. I want to ask, because there was a couple of you, I think, at the beginning who were like against a federal mask mandate, right? Would you be against it still if there was an alternative option, such as online schooling? So I would probably, at least from the beginning, say online schooling is a worse option than actually being in school. I'm saying you are losing something by that. But
For sure.
I think kids going to school not wearing masks is also a pretty negative option. That's, you know, spreading the vaccine, spreading the virus and stuff like that. So given a reasonable alternative, which would be online learning, would you be okay with doing a federal mask mandate in schools?
What do you mean? So just like
You have to
saying
wear it.
You have to wear the mask, or you do online schooling.
I'm okay
And
with that 100%.
I-
That's
I-
exactly on point with where I would go with it.
I still think that local communities should have the right to choose, but that would be my ideal. That's what I would choose for my local community.
And I guess my question is: does this exclusively apply to education, or is this for like literally like when I hear federal mandate, I'm assuming like every place with like more than 5 people, like that. That's kind of what I'm thinking. So
I'm
do you
talking
mean
about schools.
just schools? Just schools?
Schools.
Like under the DOE, they're like everybody has to wear a mask.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they do have the alternative of going to virtual schools. Yeah, I'm okay with it because you're still getting access to a high quality education. You're just not getting it the way that you want. So
You know what though? Here's
let's
the
be
thing.
honest,
Why
online
should why
schools-
should
don't think
why
they
should
have
the
the
kids
authority
that
to
are
do that, by the
vulnerable
way.
have to why should the kids that are vulnerable have to sacrifice their information or their education because the parents of another kid are too selfish to either have the kid wear a mask or get vaccinated?
Well, can I point this out because I saw GSU shaking his head, and I wanted to point this out as well. I don't think they have the authority to do that because the public schools are funded by local municipalities.
We agree on actually the DOE is looking into through their civil rights division is looking to sue states that have put in these ban on mask mandates for the reason that it violates the rights of children with disabilities.
Yeah, that's fucking
Yeah,
bullshit.
wait, but Connor,
It's not bullshit. It's not bullshit. If you have a child with asthma, various bronchial diseases, any kind of congenital heart defect,
that's not what
they
they're-
are all affected by this. And you know what? That is 100% on point. They should do that.
That is not the argument that they're making.
So, Connor, I do have one question though. Is like, what's frustrating for me is that basically you're like, okay, fucking. So what you're basically saying is, if we institute policy, we should provide reasonable alternatives. This way, people can at least live life instead of just saying like, you have to do this or you get nothing. Is that what you're saying? Like for the car, for the driving, for the vaccines and shit, is we should provide reasonable alternatives. So
yeah. Sorry if that's not the question. Keep going.
Yeah. I just wanted a yes or no on that. And then, what about if people are asserting this? They want this unabridged freedom, and they don't want to deal with the consequences.
This is where being a conservative is actually really nice. I don't think you can ever escape consequences. So when you're talking about like people ignoring mask mandates or not getting the vaccination or this, that, the other, even if they're barred from like 90% of public spaces, even if they're barred from most restaurants, even if they're barred from most schools, chances are because they're going to be congregating with other people who are also not getting vaccinated, they're probably going to be exposed to the disease eventually anyways. And it's pretty, from everything that I've read, plenty of people catch the disease and then bounce back, no consequences. But there's also a lot of people who have long-term negative health effects from the disease. There's also plenty of people who die. I literally have this is really unfortunate. I actually, I hate to share it during a shitpost debate. But I have a 29-year-old cousin-in-law who has been on life support for 60 days now. His hospital bill is like $2 million, and they keep trying to take him off of life support. And basically every time they take him off of life support, he crashes. And it's kind of getting to that position where they can't guarantee him the machine anymore. So they're not talking about like ending things right now, but they are taking treatments away. And basically, if he doesn't improve, he's just going to fall out. And his wife, because both of them were anti-vax, I think she's in denial about what's happened, because despite him dying from this disease, or potentially dying from this disease, she's still insisting on not getting vaccinated. So what I'm saying here is that this shit, and by the way, salt on the wound, they have 2 kids. So so this is where like, even if he recovers, he's going to be disabled for the rest of his life, and he's going to be medically bankrupt. The thing is, you're kind of talking about consequence, like, oh, well, we need to impose consequences on these people so they make the right decision. What I'm saying is there's no more visceral of an example of ignoring risk, assuming that you're special, assuming that, Jesus Christ is my immune system or some shit like that. And then having somebody in your community take this big of a fucking hit. And if you can't, I literally have a brother-in-law who refuses to be vaccinated and he's asthmatic. So basically I tell them, it's like, hey, you're taking the fucking risk. But there's a strong chance, or there's a small but real chance you'll end up in a fucking box. And some people have listened to this and some people haven't. And ultimately, I don't think you can escape consequence one way or the other.
But what if somebody
Connor,
else
I
is
want
being
to tell you
safe?
to your point, I feel you because I've lost 2 uncles to COVID that were anti-vaxxers. Both of their wives still will not get vaccinated. I have a cousin who was a marathon runner and is on oxygen now for the rest of her life. She will never be off oxygen. They've already told her because of the damage to her lungs.
Yeah.
So I 100% feel you on that. That's 100% real. And those are real experiences. And you know what? They are going to face those. They are going to face those. And you know what? You're still going to have those that are going to say, no, I'm not going to do it.
But
It's
the
unfortunate they're going to pay the cost.
The frustration for me is like we hyper isolate, right? We take like somebody takes all the precautions, right? They do the distancing, they do the mask, like before the vaccinations, right? We do everything we possibly can, and then even after we take these actions themselves to try and mitigate their risk, and then somebody else comes in, they're coming in with the Lambda variant after you get vaccinated, and then you're like, okay, well, I've taken all of the precautions and I've taken every single thing I can personally do on my own free will, and this dumb fuck comes in with a worse strain that basically is not that makes me unable to have me taking all the actions, right? I do everything I possibly can, and then that dumb fuck comes in, and it's like, how do we resolve that issue?
But this is so wordy. This is one thing I wanted to touch on because you mentioned this in your intro. I think you and maybe truly false, like this appeal to returning to normalcy and not having to wear a mask. Like we live in a global society that's very connected, unlike the past. So even if the vaccination rate was higher or whatever number you wanted, the risk of what you're talking about is still very real, which is why I push for stuff like mask mandates and social distancing so much because, like, the Delta variant didn't come from the United States, right? It came from, I think, Europe, maybe India, Europe, India.
India.
I can't.
I think
Yeah,
Delta was India, Lambda, South America.
yeah. So these new variants
And
are
then
going to
Mu.
pop up regardless, and that's why the conversation around the boosters, which I don't want to go into, is really interesting. But yeah.
But do you acknowledge that these anti-vaxxers, while they may not be the originators, they are very much the perpetuators?
Well, anybody can have a. Yeah, I don't want to go into that, but I agree with you somewhat. Yeah, but yeah. So like we have to understand that we're not going to be in whatever is normal for any time soon.